mean, it's no secret, like I said, that the system is broke. I'm not going to try to paint it where it's not, the truth. I mean, this system's broke. And for 15-year-old kids coming in that have 30 years to do, what I would tell them is that what the guys told me when I came in, some of the ones that seen I had some sense. Get into school, set good goals, stay away from the prison stuff, if you're trying to, first of all, you're trying to get high, all that kind of crap, the peer pressure that a lot of kids go through, it's in here like crazy. Stay away from that stuff, walk your own path, decide what you want to do and find out what your interests are and try your best to find, to keep that your focus. Where the system fails is, I've been locked up for 18 years and I've still never had a chance to get the counseling for why I killed my mom and dad. I've had introspection, I've had journals upon journals, and I've come to a lot of answers. And I could go on the rest of my life and be healthy. But there's still things that how do I deal with me and my sisters? Me and my sisters, we love each other, but we've never had a chance to sit down and talk about this, If anybody can give advice about choices and the good ones and the bad ones, that's me. Because I've learned from bad choices where it takes you. And good choices is what I've been making since I've been in here,
There's a variety of attitudes or personalities that come through here. You see some that's real timid and scared. And you see some that's kind of brash and cocky. You're usually in intake maybe a week or two until they reclass you and you find a unit and a program for you to go to.
It hasn't been easy. I still have my ups and downs. There's still days, you wake up, you don't want to get up. Because I know when I get up, I'm gonna go through the same emotions of hearing the same conversations or being locked up. Nobody wants to be locked up. I don't want to eat Aramark meals and spend my time in the cell. I want to play music. I want to write music, but I don't have a guitar. And if I try to get one, it's at rec time, and I don't get much rec because of where I work. So there's a lot of frustrations, but those are small things for now. And then you try to find other ways. But my focus is drive. I want to do something to make up or try to make up for what I've done. And I've got a lot of opinions, I've got a lot of ideas, and I can't give up because I have to try to get that out. I have to put that in some kind of form. I've got lots of pieces of paper I keep under my bed where I write things down, business ideas, lyrics, journal ideas, whatever. My mind's constantly going, and that's what keeps me focused. And that being, even though I have a messed up crime, my mom and dad were good people. We had a lot of problems in our home, but there were good things they passed along to me, and one of them was work ethic. So that's helped me, tremendously in here. I'm the one that made the decision to do this, but it didn't happen overnight. And none of these kids, these kids either, they can't think, because they're not thinking, they're having someone else think for them, someone stronger thinking for them. So it's why did it happen? And focus on that, because like I said, none of these kids they're not monsters. There may be bad people out there, and but most of them, especially the young ones, they don't even know why they do some of the stuff they do. And sometimes they think they know why, but after it happens and reality hits, and then they have to kind of come in here and think about it. We need to take it case by case and take them out of the prison system. The prison system's not meant to examine psychologically what's going on in the person's head. It's meant to keep you from society and punish you. So we're throwing kids in here, maybe we roll the dice and hope that they won't be a problem when they come back out, if they ever make it.
I gotta spend my 18th birthday in here. I be making decisions without thinking it through. I won't be having I be making bad decisions without thinking about the consequences. And then I just be getting caught up.
You know, I've known plenty of them that are stuck on psychotropic drugs or can't keep, stay out of segregation because they're just messed up in the head now. You know, they were having problems with their peers. Now they get in here, there are no more peers, and some of the ones they are in the same boat they're in, and it's just they spiral, out of control. So what we need to do is examine what's going on with them, and you can only do that outside of this system.
I'm telling you, I'm willing to compromise with you and do a week-to-week evaluation on your progress, on your behavior, and see how things go. If your behavior shows that it's consistent and it's not showing negative behavior, I will help you get your level 2. Okay? It's up to you right now.
For me, it took 13 years for me to actually say I forgive myself. It took me 13 years. I could intellectually understand why I did it and tell a story about why it happened. I know what I was thinking back then. I know what I was feeling, and I know I didn't want to do it, but I felt trapped, and no one was helping, even though I was asking and pleading for help. No one was helping, and it happened. But for 13 years, I couldn't get past what I did and feeling just so sorry about it, and then everybody that hurt in the process, what I took away from them. And so it's like I wanted to hold on to it to say, you deserve it. You deserve to be tormented and depressed. And I was still doing good, but I wasn't at peace with myself. And it's still a struggle, even then, it's still a struggle. I mean, I have times, where I respond to something on the news. Immediate reaction, this happens, horrific crime. My first thought is, what happened? But then I'm like, that's what people think about me, and I don't. So that's why I try to understand. I don't blame you if you are afraid or leery. I mean, I had guys in prison that have been leery just because you're 14, you kill your own parents, you must be crazy. I'm not going to mess with you, and I understand that, but dealing with myself, I know what I'm thinking, I know what I feel, and so I'm able to tell myself now that I have something to offer, that I like to think I have more to offer because I've been on both sides. I've seen what the worst state of mind can bring you as a human being, what can happen, and what the ripple effect it causes. I've seen it, I've felt it, I've been through it. So I'd like to think that I can actually keep other people from doing that. What is the reality check is everything that your decision and how it affects the rest of your life and everything that you lose in the process. Because all it takes is one thing, one peer pressure moment. And it happens so quickly, and the next thing you know, you're in for the rest of your life. So it's about choices, and I think that's what needs to appeal to kids more than anything is the choices that you make. It's extremely sensitive and crucial that you think for yourself and you do what you think is right and not what you think someone else wants you to do, that you know within yourself is wrong. In my case, I killed my mom and dad. I would think most people would think, why? Why? Why did you do that?
Did anybody ask that at the time? I mean, was there any exploration of, okay, let's slow down here, he's a child, instead of rushing to a lot of judgment and throwing away the key, let's examine this. Did that happen at all? I just don't know the history of your case well enough.
Like I said, it happened after they ensured I was waived to the adult system, and unbeknownst to me and my family, I never had no record. I wasn't even a problem in school. And my family, as far as I know, I'm pretty much the only person in my family that's been locked up. Nobody had anything about, any clues. So once they ensured that, 24, 48 hours later, all options were done. But I didn't know that. I was going to the RDC, Reception Diagnosis Center, at 15 years old, and where, all the options, I'm telling guys I'm not going to prison because my lawyer told me I'm not going to prison. And these guys are saying, you're in prison right now. They're trying to give me reality checks, and I'm trying to not listen to them. My lawyer told me, I'm not going to prison. He said, you'll go to a place where you'll get counseling. around other kids your age, you know. Well, you see a counselor there, and I tell him, and he doesn't laugh at me. He says, well, I'm going to be your ultimate reality check. We don't care if you're 8 years old or you're 80 years old, and that's exactly what he said. You have a double murder. You have 3 places to choose from: Wabash, Michigan City, or Pendleton. He said, and I said, I'm not trying to be mean, but this is where it's at, and this is what's happened, and this is the choices you've made. That's prison, and I finally accepted it, of course. But in our system, the options are like there are no options like that, you know. So for a 15-year-old, you know, coming into the system who's at this Wabash thing, or they're scared about coming out, it's almost like you know, you have to kind of just man up. You know, you really have to say, I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to you know. And then the worst case scenario is I'm not going to let someone take stuff from me, you know, the prison stuff, you know. Then that stuff still happens, rape and all that kind of crap. But if you're going to be who you're going to be, and make no apologies for it about being square or whatever, or keeping to yourself, you'll make it. A person like that will make it. But it's in spite of the system. You know, it's like going to war. You know, people used to go to Vietnam. You know, they spend a 12 or 13-month tour over there, and I'm going from a book I read from a Vietnam veteran. He said, it could make a man out of you, but if you spent any longer than that, it'll make something else of you, negative. You know, but it's in spite of the environment, you know, that you'd have to, it's like, you know, you're just making the most of a bad situation.
When you started talking about you being at RDC at 15,
Yeah.
and you didn't know, really, you had no clue
No.
what was going on
No.
at the time, which helps put me in the mindset of the kids we've been following. Do you think they even realize at this point, take me back to when you were 15 and there's this swirl of confusion and emotion. Take me back to that time. What are they feeling? What's going through their head?
As far as like other inmates? Or
Yeah, the kids we're following right now who are now where
Okay.
you were 18 years ago. What are they going through?
Well, they're going through probably feeling extremely paranoid that a lot of guys are checking them out. You know, that's no lie. I mean, for me, I was 15 years old and baby-faced. And, you know, I mean, at the time, you know, you have the guys in for sex crimes that have molested, you know, guys my age, you know, and I'm doing time alongside them. I'm in the shower with them, you know.
Was that scary?
Yeah, well, it was scary for sure. It was the ultimate. You're tense all the time. You know, I felt tense, and I've never been to prison. Now I'm determined, and my dad gave me a certain kind of strength. I'm determined to survive. But you know, like I said, you know, you still feel like you're vulnerable because you're put in those situations. In the worst case scenario, what if I have to defend myself and do things I'm not supposed to do just to protect myself? How do I explain that to my family? Yeah, that's what's going through my mind. If I, God forbid, I had to actually do some really bad stuff to somebody just to keep them from doing it to me, how do I explain that to, because there is no self-defense in prison. I mean, once in a blue moon you might hear about someone getting that, but usually you participated, you're guilty. End of story, you know. But these kids, you know, the kids that are coming in, you know, it's rough. I feel sorry for them because, like I said, I'm at RDC. I'm the youngest kid in the history of the state at this time. That's why I was in Indianapolis Star, and there's no kid that ever been waived at 14 at the time. It's happened several times since, like it's 12, you know. But, you know, and I get there and I get my hair cut, the first thing you do when you're there, and I tell the guy, you know, I had some guys try to tell me, don't tell them you're 15, tell them you're 17. I'm not a liar, and I just, first guy asked me, he was, you look kind of young, how old are you? I was, he was cutting my hair, I said, I'm 15. And he stopped me, he's like, what? You know, he stopped, put his stuff down. You know how quickly that spread throughout that prison? Yeah, I mean, people wanted to be my bunkie at that time for the wrong reasons, you know? It's ugly. It's ugly, it's a sick environment. It's prison, but that's what it is, it's a prison. It's where you put the people that are the undesirables, the people that can't function out there. But there's a lot of people in there that, in here, I don't know, that's another story, but you know.
I'll just keep coming
Yeah.
back and keep doing it. Do you think judges realize when they sentence a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old to adult prison, do you think they ultimately realize what that next life is going to be like for these kids? Or do you think they pretty much say, okay, this case done, next case? What would you want the judges to know about the consequences of their decisions?
No, that's a one. I don't want to I feel like I'm assuming. And like I said, I mean, I've been locked up 18 years and I've never been out there as an adult. But I like to think that I got a pretty good understanding, at least of some of the flaws going on out there. And from what I can see looking out, is I see a lot of people that are busy, but not really busy. They're busy with all the distractions out there, their cell phones and the internet and all that kind of stuff. And I know there's good people, and I know there's good people in their jobs, there's good judges out there. But I think what a lot of people feel, they feel that they almost feel hopeless, like the system is just busted as it is, and it's almost like a roll of the dice, and they got to do their job. They're going to land a sentence down. They're going to hope that they've appeased the community, so for re-election to come around, and they're going to hope, maybe the good ones are going to hope that, if they see something within this kid, that he'll have some time to think and he'll come out productive. But it's a shot of the dice.
So many kids that we've talked to tell us, yeah, I signed some paper, I didn't really know what I was signing, and everybody was telling me something different, and so I just, I took the plea agreement. Tell me about the issue of, at that age, not really having a clue of the legal work involved and what you're signing and not signing.
I had no clue. And the psychologist had told them that. They said, they found me guilty, I took a plea agreement, guilty but mentally ill. They had both sides, prosecutor and defense, had said I had suffered a mental illness during the commission that would make it unclear maybe between the right and wrong, kind of a wordplay there. Clearly, that someone said, post-traumatic stress disorder, after the fact, or a lot of victimization. But they had said that I am intellectually 14, and then with mental. They said they seemed very receptive and very, conscious and very remorseful for what I did, but still so much going on up here, trying to, from different drug use or problems and stuff. So they didn't think I was capable of understanding it. I wasn't capable. And because it's the law, for one. And I don't know how much you've read into the law, but I mean, the smartest person in the world, the law is written almost in a dyslexic form to allow great lawyers from the bad lawyers to manipulate it. They write things, these long run-on sentences and this, and that, and so it's hard to understand the law to begin with if you're the most intellectual person. Now, when I'm 14 years old, never been in trouble before, I'm trusting my lawyer, and
the lawyer told you to take a plea agreement, or he recommended you to take a plea agreement?
Yeah. And because they're saying, well, you can get 120 years. Now, I know my crime, I need to be punished for what I did. I'm never gonna take that away. But it shouldn't have been just punishment, because it isn't like I just walked out into society and just took some random person. There's a reason this happened, and I'm not justifying it, but I'm saying there's an understanding behind this, that it's a family tragedy. It's something that happened within my family, and me and my family, it would have been nice if everyone has such a great opinion now, the community, well, you need to be locked up. Where were you before? Where were you, in school? I'm showing all the signs. Where were you then? So there's definitely but as understanding the law, no, I didn't understand it. I trusted my lawyer, and my lawyer just, my lawyer has given me some advice. He gave me advice for like the first 2 years after I got locked up, friendly advice. But he made some mistakes. Personally, I don't appreciate the lies. I know he wasn't that that naive to the system. I don't appreciate him lying and saying I wasn't going to prison. So
And I take it yours was a very high-profile case, which made it even.
Yeah, they got me out. I was out of the community within 11 months, so they didn't keep me long. Like I said, the prosecutor I got right now, he's the same one back then. I respect him. And I understand politics. I mean, I understand there is a such thing called politics. He does get publicly elected. If he's going to let me go, he's got to have some good reasons to defend that. And so I understand that. But he's done some pretty good. Like I said, when I was discussing modification, he has met me much further than what most prosecutors will, because they're hired to put you in, not basically let you go.
You bring up sentence modification, and that's those are two words that we've heard a lot over the past couple of weeks from the kids that we've been
Oh, really?
following. And they place great hope on
Yeah.
sentence modification. It comes out of their mouth every day. And I'm sure maybe part of that is wishful thinking, and another part of it is that psychologically that's helping them get
Hope.
through this.
Yeah, hope.
That little bit of hope. How likely is sentence modification when you're 15 and looking at, a murder case? How does that really work?
I would tell anybody the hard answer is buckle in for at least a decade, because nobody's going to consider you if you're going to do at least 10 years. And personally, if you've done a murder, even if it was, it would have to be really, like, say, you were in the process of getting beat and you've been beat down over and over and over again. That's a different story. But if you had calculated a murder, you had been victimized, okay, but you calculated a murder, you took it in your own hands. Personally, my opinion is you should do a good 10, because you need to get something. You need to get some things figured out, and you need to be punished. And it's like there's a lot of hurt feelings that happen with these cases. So understand when people are out there and they're angry and they're hurt. The victims. I understand that. I don't know what they're going through necessarily, but I can understand them being hurt, and somebody needs to pay for that. But not just one person. You don't mean you throw this kid away either, because kids just don't wake up one day and say, "Oh, I'm going to kill somebody." Even if the ones that said that during the early times, just like I said some things in the early days that were lies. Because I was the same lies I was telling my friends, because I was lying to them trying to impress them. So it ain't like, when I got locked up at 14, I just turned that off and just decided, well, I was doing the same thing I was doing before I got locked up. I was 14. You were not grown up yet, so.
What happens to your friends?
They're gone. And I would say, if I met any 15-year-old right now coming in and he still has friends, and that's because it just happened. Give it a couple years, and I never made it to high school. I was in junior high. You're lucky to be friends with junior. We haven't actually had the cliques yet. So it was, the odds about my friends staying around were not in my corner. But when you have a crime like this, and I'm from a small town where murders don't happen, then let alone a 14-year-old kills his parents, there's a peer pressure to that. I'd heard the jokes, and there were jokes being made in the school, and at my expense, you going crazy, doing what I did, or what I can only imagine. So then, I would imagine some people that were my friends kind of want to pull away, because they had to deal with it. They were left on the world. They couldn't just. That's like my family. My family had to move away. Some of them did. They moved out of state because they didn't want to be. They didn't want to go through that, because people want to sit there and point the finger, and they shouldn't have to suffer for what I've done, So friends are. You're not gonna really have your friends, but it's probably in a lot of situations it's probably a good thing. It's a lot easier. At least it's a lot easier for a kid to start over than it was a person in their 20s that goes back to the same neighborhood and they're still there.
We had an adult offender at Wabash yesterday tell us that what you don't stop to think about when you're locked up is time goes on for the people who are on the outside, and eventually they just sort of forget about you on the inside, and they move on with their lives, and little by little the visits become less and less.
Yep, that would be true.
Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like in the beginning, lots of people are there, then throughout the middle, you're by yourself, and then as you get towards an out date, a lot of people come back. I've been in contact with several people that I was in contact when I first started. Then the 15, 17, whatever, 16 years in the middle, they're gone. And then I was getting the everything looked like a go for the modification, so you start wanting to contact people. And it's on both sides. It's like it's hard, for me it's hard to have visits. It's hard to have, I want to see people, but it's hard to come up here and you have to sit in the seat. You can't get up and go to the bathroom. To me, when I come to visit, it actually makes me feel more locked up, because I can't leave with them. I'm constantly being watched to make sure I'm not trying to do anything, bring something in. All the strip searches, I'm going in and out. These aren't, all that kind of stuff. It's like I'm jumping through all these hoops, and it disrupts the regular rhythm of my day in here, which is there is a rhythm to try to get by each day. You know, you're going to get up, and I'm going to go to work, or I'm going to work out, or I'm going to do this, and that's how I function. And so, and it's the same in the street. You know, I know it's hard for people to try to. Who writes letters? You know, who's writing letters? You know, I mean, here we actually have a thing called JPay, where we can actually email and type, which is great. It's new, I guess within the last 2 years, and newer things that are coming in the system. But it's not instantaneous. It still has to be, read. It still has to be screened before it comes and goes, and it don't work on the weekends. But still, I actually write more people through the JPay now than what I do in letters, because who's writing letters these days? But it's hard for them out there to try to kind of come in here. There's two different worlds. It's completely different. So I can't really fault people for not staying in contact.
There were several of the kids that we've been with who've been at Wabash for 8 months or whatever, who've never had a single visit. They keep hoping or anticipating, they were supposed to come last week and they didn't, but I bet my mom will be here next week, or I bet my dad will come see me, yet they get no visits at all. What's that like when you're young? I mean, as an adult, maybe you can handle it better, but when you're 14 or 15, even 16, 17, 18, human contact is very important. Yeah.
Well, they probably feel, completely left out, forgotten, I should say. And it definitely is worse at that age, because you're still, when you're 16, 17, you're becoming a young man. And I'm sure a lot of them want to be independent, but at the same time, if they had any kind of family or friends, you know what I mean, they're in here, and there really are no probably close friends that they're trying to consider close friends. I mean, in here, more guys are just trying to victimize them. So you want that lifeline on the street, and if they don't have it, then it's probably very lonely,
When you say that, the other thing that's very crystallizing for me is that you're at that age, all the things you would normally experience on the outside, getting a driver's license, all those rites of passage as a teenager, you don't have that. You're locked up during all those sort of important moments that help you become an adult. What's that like to see all those moments sort of pass you by?
Well, when I was 17, it'd been a few years, and I still had a little bit of contact every once in a while with one or two of my friends. Usually it was girls. Girls were better at maintaining contact than guys, and it's probably still that way. But a younger sister of a friend of mine, I was actually more in contact with her, and I would talk to him. He was going through high school, and he was like, it's great, it's great. That's what he kept on saying, it's great, That was his phrase, and he was getting his license. They were talking about driving, and it kills you. I wanted to hear it, but at the same time, I'm thinking, man, what am I missing? I'm missing so much, I mean, you watch the movie, it's got the high school things in it, and I'm like, I never had a chance to do none of that, There's so much that I have missed out on, and so to me, it made me feel, and still to this day, it makes me feel like I still look at people as being older than me, and I'm talking about guys in their 20s that are 25, that are just coming into the system. I'm 32 years old, and I still feel younger than them because I haven't done some of the simple things that are the rites of passage. I haven't done it. I took a different, I guess, a rites of passage in a way, which not in in a positive sense, because I have no other choice, but it makes me feel kind of, I don't know, different,
Yeah, in your mind, you're still a young man.
Yeah, intellectually, I know I'm an adult, and I act like an adult and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, I still, I've never had a driver's license. I've never held a real job. I was a taxpayer one time, but in a program at Wabash working a prison job, I paid taxes. And I thought that was the greatest thing in the world, and there guys have been paying taxes for years, so you'll get over that real quick. And I was like, this is great, because I feel normal,
Are you concerned at all that when you get out, it's all going to be so foreign that it's going to almost be overwhelming?
It's going to be overwhelming. I know I get overwhelmed anyways, but I stay pretty controlled. I'm aware of some of the things that your own personal things, but I don't fear it. I look forward to it. I look forward, you know, I'll take my time. I don't know if you're familiar with the Leonard Skinner song, Simple Man. It's my motto, you know what I mean? The lyrics are just ingrained, and I constantly repeat that. So, you know, you just take your time, you know, and that's exactly what I'm not afraid to ask for help. If, you know, I got computer skills, thank God, now because of the job that I work. And I've learned how to type since I've been here, thanks to JPay. So, you know, like I said, you make the most of the situation if you're thinking about it. But I get out here, I'm on the gas station, or scratch that. I don't even want to, I'll take the bus system. I don't feel like paying the gas prices, you know. But anyways, you know, everything is, you know, the cell phones, I'm sure is going to be the weirdest thing for me, because it's like everyone's lightsaber or something, you know. I got a cell phone. It's the everyday thing, you know. So that wasn't happening before I got locked up. Or 93, hardly anything was happening back in 93, you know. But I look forward to it. I mean, it doesn't intimidate me. I'm not going to be like, you know, I don't have like this major ego to try to prove to you I know how to do it. If I don't know how to do it, I don't know how to do it. You know, so.
So what do you go home to? If by some miracle, some magic wand came out and they said, you are out of here tomorrow, where do you go? Who do you go home to? What do you have left on the outside after so many years behind bars?
Well, I've got a great network of people, but that's because of me reaching out and trying to establish that. You know, I got my uncle, you know, my dad's brother lives down in Lexington, Kentucky. I've got friends that are very successful, educated people that already got me a few things. You know, they're in my corner. I got other family down in Tennessee, and you know, I've got people. I've had several people say, you can, if you had to live here, you're living here. And then, like I said, I still have a great program that would love to have me there. It's a real house of 16 people, co-ed. It's for ex-offenders, both male and female, and for college students. It was started from a college up there in South Bend, Indiana, dealing with trying to reintegrate you into the community. We're doing community projects here, counseling 24/7, which for the overwhelming part, you know, I would like to have someone that, I got friends that are like counselors, but you know, to actually have a counselor where that's what he or she does, it would be nice, because I know I'm going to have moments where it's going to be, you know, the world is moving by so quick. And I got a friend of mine that did 26 years. He just got out 2 years ago. Now he's 60 years old, you know, but he's done a great job through letters of kind of almost like paying it back to me, you know, saying this is what I've been feeling. He said his greatest struggle was going anywhere by himself. He said, he'd be like, I'm in Walmart, and he goes, I feel like everyone's looking at me. Everyone knows I just came out of prison, you know, and he's giving me advice. He said, you want to have people around you that are sensitive to that, you know, or that support you, you know, so that they don't not going to sit there, man, you know, grow up or whatever like that, you know, not dismiss it, because that's some serious stuff. You know, and he's gotten through it now. But he said once he learned that no one knew who he was, and therefore no one's even paying attention to him, you know, and he's done great. You know, he's got an apartment, he's got a job, he's in Elkhart, you know, and he's got a job and stuff, and
So you almost feel, that's the term they use, becoming institutionalized.
Yeah.
Where you're so used to somebody telling you what to do, what time to do it, watching you, that the walls sort of close in on you, and then suddenly it's gone.
But for me, yeah, I'm used to it, but I can think for myself, and I can make my own schedule. I just roll with the punches. You know, I try to stay as stress-free as possible. I don't generally stress about the prison stuff, you know, as far as when we got to eat, I got someone coming to my door to count me, and you know, and all that kind of stuff, you know. So I'm dealing with it because I have no choice but to deal with it. But I will not miss it, you know, and I can set my own. Like I said, I got my own drum I'm marching to here. I can do it. So I look forward to that on the street. And like I said, I don't you know, the institutionalized, and there are guys in here that don't do for themselves, and they're going to have it really rough. And a lot of them are the recidivistic ones that come back, you know, because they're either they can't deal with, they got attitude problems, or they just don't have no confidence with themselves, or both.
Because your crime and some of the crimes that the kids we've been following are very similar, they're struggling emotionally with taking the responsibility. I know what I did. Mm-hmm. I have, and all of them say it almost verbatim the same way. I know what I did was wrong. I have to own up to it and take responsibility for it. Can you ever ultimately, internally rectify in your own mind what you did and why you did it? Or is it just something you know, I'm going to have to live with this for the rest of my life? And
Well, for me, it took 13 years for me to actually say, and it sounds a little cliche, and maybe to me it sounds cliche because I've heard it so much, but to actually say I forgive myself, it took me 13 years. And the reason I could intellectually understand why I did it and tell a story about why it happened, and I didn't know there's been people that have gone through worse. I know what I was thinking back then, I know what I was feeling, and I know I didn't want to do it, but I felt trapped. And no one was helping, even though I was asking and pleading for help, no one was helping. And it happened. But for 13 years, I couldn't get past what I did and feeling just so sorry about it, and then everybody that hurt in the process, what I took away from them. And so it's like I wanted to hold on to it to say, you deserve it. You deserve to be tormented and depressed and all that kind of. And I was still doing good, but I wasn't at peace with myself. And it's still a struggle, even then, it's still a struggle. I mean, I have times, where I respond to something on the news. Immediate reaction, this happens, a horrific crime. My first thought is, what happened? But then I'm like, that's what people think about me, and I don't, so that's why I try to understand. I don't blame you if you are afraid or leery. I mean, I've had guys in prison that have been leery just because, you're 14, you kill your own parents, you must be crazy. I'm not gonna mess with you, and I understand that. But dealing with myself, I know what I'm thinking, I know what I feel, and so I'm able to tell myself now that I have something to offer, that I like to think I have more to offer because I've been on both sides. I've seen what the worst state of mind can bring you as a human being, what can happen, and what the ripple effect it causes. I've seen it, I've felt it, I've been through it. So I'd like to think that I can actually, I have the insight to use it for good, to try to keep other people from doing that. And for kids, it's not about, I don't think it's like, there's scared straight programs out there that I think some, there's some productive for some people, but I also think there's other kids out there that, as you mentioned in your letter, they're not scared. And from one, because they're trying to prove themselves so much that they're going to say, I'm not going to be scared. What is the reality check is everything that your decision and how it affects the rest of your life and everything that you lose in the process. Because all it takes is one thing, one peer pressure moment. You're out riding in a car, and you guys are going to rob somebody because you need money to get drugs. I'm reading a book called Inside the Mind of a Teen Killer, and it profiles lots of kids, And so a lot of these stories, where these kids were just out, they went to go rob somebody, not right, but they weren't going to kill anybody. In the moment, panic happens. And it happens so quickly, and the next thing you know, you're in for the rest of your life. You're over with, there's a sense of it's being over with. In a lot of states, they're getting life, where they're not going to get out. Even with life with parole, I don't know too many lifers that get out because it's a political decision. Once again, no one wants to be responsible in case you decide to do something stupid when you get out. Whose head's on the chopping block? The parole board, So it's about choices, and I think that's what needs to appeal to kids more than anything is the choices that you make. It's extremely sensitive and crucial that you think for yourself and you do what you think is right and not what you think someone else wants you to do, that within yourself is wrong.
because all these kids have told us, I never in a million years thought I'd be here.
Yeah.
Never thought that was
Because who
possible.
planned? Well, yeah.
They're shocked.
And then there's the kids that come from certain kind of neighborhoods, that it's almost, as you mentioned before, rites of passage, or a foregone conclusion. It's going to happen. It's almost like it's required, or it's like make me a man, come into prison, but then they get here and it ruins them. There was a chance, and they come into prison and they get around their buddies or the guys that have been coming and going left and right. They have no goals. They're just existing. you know, and they're telling the same drug stories and the same stupid stories they told on the first 2 or 3 bits, and they're on their 4th and 5th bits, you know. And these kids get around that, and then it's just a person coming and going in the warehouse, you know.
I think the other thing a lot of kids think is, I'm a juvenile, I'll never be waived to adult court.
Not in this day. I mean, as we're talking about a 12-year-old, I mean, I hadn't heard of the 12-year-old in this state, but I'd seen the one convict, you know, or being charged with the murder of his parents. And I mean, my thing is, I see us spiraling. I mean, how low are we going to take it? I mean, are we really this busy? Are we really this uncaring to say, well, he's 12 years old and he killed 2 people, give him life? You can't control what you're born into, and you can't control what's going on to you as a 12-year-old. You know, and something happened to you. I don't care who you are talking about. Something happened to this 12-year-old kid to have him do that. Now, yeah, he should be punished. He should be punished, but helped. Taken away, I mean, if you kill 2 people, then obviously something's wrong, and you could be a threat to others or yourself. And so you need to be put into an environment where you have 24-hour-a-day counseling available to you, and to help get you to the point of success. And I don't think we have to hold them to 21. I'm not talking about the juvenile system. I'm not talking about the adult system. I'm talking about a place where it's you know, the end of that sentence is kind of like it's kind of, let's not even really talk about it. Let's just get this person right. If this person can be salvaged, let's just salvage one person, at least to say we've solved the problem, instead of just put it up in here and we're not solving nothing. We're just passing it along to another department. You know, it makes no sense to me. And the only thing we're doing is weakening ourselves as a whole. Because if these guys do 20 or 30 or 40 years and get out, what are they going to be like? You know?
Did your situation seems so unique because you actually now have reunited with some family of sorts that you hadn't seen in, what, 16, 17 years?
I had last seen, over the last 2 years, I've gone through a reunion. So we're talking from, well, 93 to 2009. So 16 years where I didn't even know where half of them were at.
You're talking sisters?
Not my sisters. My sisters have, even though there's been ups and downs, there's been years of silence, but an occasional letter, maybe once a year on a birthday or Christmas, and it's pretty much been understood that no matter what's going on, no matter what we're talking about, that we love each other and they want me out. They've made that clear. You know, we've had arguments, we've had disagreements with what we all felt growing up. You know, one experience, mom and dad this way, one experience in this way, and then me, you know, obviously I did the worst because of my crime and what I took away from them. But one thing's clear, there were problems in the family. We all can agree on that. You know, but yeah,
they want you out.
Yeah, they want me out. They want me out bad.
And what about your mom's side of the family and your dad's side?
Well, there's only one person on my mom's side of the family, and that's the one that disagrees right now. And I feel if I could just have the one moment, like we're sitting right now, I feel like if I had that one moment, and I'm not trying to sway her.
And who is she? That's your mom's?
It's my mom's sister, yeah. I'm not trying to sway her or manipulate. I just want to be able to, if she wants to yell at me, if she wants to get all, I want to know, you know. So.
You would have that conversation with her if she would.
Yeah.
Has she had any contact with you?
No, I haven't heard from her since, since I was officially arrested and interrogated, and that was the last time I seen her.
How was she then?
Quiet. I can only assume because we didn't really say anything. She was just kind of teary-eyed, you know, shocked. It's the worst state of mind I've ever been in my life. You know, like I said, my world is spinning. You know, I got the sounds of the crime. I've got, is it really happening? I've got her. I feel like she's, like, you know, there's a paranoia. She knows. I mean, I'm worried about what my family's going to think about me. I don't know what to think about myself. You know, so I'm just, you know, trying to look at the floor mostly. And that was the last moment. So that's where she's pretty much just frozen me at that. And I'm not anything like that now. I haven't been anything like that even, you know, since 93. You know, because of the way I feel about what I did, you know, and what I'm trying to do to make up for it. And I know there's people out there be like, you know, so what? You know, you kind of like I waived my right because of where I took it. You know, but even like when I did this, that I had any kind of clue what was going to happen next. That's where I was, in my 14-year-old mind, I thought, in the way I did the crime, I thought that it was a way of making them disappear without feeling any pain. It's a long story, I don't want to really get into the details, but I thought that I would go live with my sister and that I would have a new life and I'd finally be free and actually experience happiness or something, you know?
So that's the mind of a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Mind of a 14-year-old is not thinking, oh my God, after this, I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. That wasn't part of your thought process.
Even when I confessed to it, and everybody kept saying the same thing, you just need to get some help, you know, because I'm crying. Everybody said you need to get some help, you know. Even then, I'm thinking mental institution. I'm literally thinking that prison never entered my mind until I came to prison, because I was being told I wasn't going to prison. And then when in the months in the county jail, guys are telling me you'll probably go to prison or whatever, and I'm telling my lawyer, no, none of that stuff was there.
You're helping us to understand the mind of a teenager versus the mind of an adult.
Yeah.
Which we're trying to show kind of the difference between the two and ultimately where the two end up meeting in adult prison. I know I've taken a ton of your time and I could sit here and talk to you for 5 more hours, but I'm sure she's ready to kill me. If you had some final words to say to people who are watching this, who maybe by the end of this show are thinking, this is a little more gray than I thought it was. It seemed so black and white when I read about it in the newspaper. What would you want them ultimately to know about you and the kids who find themselves in these positions from your own words and your own perspective?
What I would want them to know, first of all, if they are thinking it's gray, then that's a good thing, because it is a gray area. And what I would really want them to know is there's a story behind it that no one, and people should know this. I mean, people, if they give any thought to it, at a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, 16-year-old, they don't just wake up and do this. Yes, we need to talk about a punishment because it's a crime, it's a safety thing, but it should not be thrown away, because nobody at that age should ever be thrown away. I don't care what they did, because, and it's like the school shootings. I mean, we've read about the school shootings, we've seen it in the bully thing and stuff, and you've read the letter, these journals that these kids write, I'm going to get revenge. Of course they feel that way. Of course they feel it. And in the world we live in now, there's a lot more violence being passed around, through word of mouth or through TV and all that kind of stuff. So it's more relevant. All it takes is one person to kind of do it, and then it kind of just, the idea gets passed around. So it's more present, but the same feelings are there. These kids are feeling the same thing they felt 30, 40 years ago. It's just the methods that are being used to deal with that is a lot worse, which to me is a reflection of what we're doing wrong as a society, thinking that everyone can pretty much fend for themselves. That's not what you do. You help each other. So these, I'm hoping that people would watch this and say, there's more to the story, and maybe, I can as a teacher, I can maybe try to reach out more to the kids going on, at my school, or as a parent especially. I can actually take an interest in my kid's life. Not with the, just being strictly disciplined, but actually take an interest, ask them some questions, stay on them, let them know that they can talk, that they'll help them, I know kids push people away a lot, but if you constantly make it as a reminder and let them know you love them, that you're trying to be there for them and give them guidance, that could help. Because, I didn't feel like I could talk to my parents. I couldn't talk to my parents, and I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody else, because that's not the way we were raised. We were raised to keep within the family, and we're all happy and, hide it and all that kind of stuff.
But
So
one thing I forgot to ask you, you're from a small town.
Yeah.
And two of the brothers that we're following were also from a very small town, and it was a very high-profile murder. How different is it being from a small town, and what does that really ultimately encompass, because it's such a tight community where everybody's paying attention? If you could just talk to me a little bit about the small town aspect of when something like this happens.
Well, I think the small town thing is like, small towns are still considered like almost like we all know each other and we all like that. We're all in each other's business, and obviously that gets aggravating at times. But I guess that I kind of feel more of a wanting to say that there's a challenge there, because people claim to be all each other's business, yet when there's problems going on in a family, and everybody knows about problems going on in this family, but it's none of my business now. It's like people need to reach out more, but do it in a way where it's such a sensitive subject, because there's sometimes people overreact. Especially when parents discipline their kids, and then this how parents end up getting arrested or something because they, I'm just trying to discipline my kid or whatever. But I think in a small town, people need to get together more than what they actually are. And like I said, it can't work the same. When it's none of my business, but yet it is my business. So it's definitely a lot worse in a small town. As far as when these crimes happen, because then everyone feels like it's one of their own. Yeah, that's how it felt. That's how it was in my town. I had people on the news that, my town's small, but I mean, it's, I had people in the news there, saying, well, I think he didn't get enough time, 60 years wasn't enough time, and, all that kind of stuff. But like I said before, where were you before? And I'm not saying it sound like a smart ass here. I'm saying really, seriously, where were you before? And why didn't you step in when you could? Because if you have strong opinions now, you should have had some opinions before, when you see me, doing what I was doing and pulling away and showing all the obvious signs. And I especially mean that for teachers that were at my school.
So what was your sentence ultimately?
I took a plea agreement for 30 years on count one murder and 30 years on count two murder, to be served consecutively, one right after the other. And I've already served count one, and I've got 8 years left on the 30-year sentence on count two. 60 years. It was 60 due 30 as far as our credit class. Our earned credit time goes in this state. So as long as I stay out of trouble, then I'll have to do 30 years. And I've got, there's 4 years you can get for educational or program cuts that you can actually get off of 30. So I've got 3.5 years knocked off for that.
So you're looking at 8 more years.
8 more years, yeah. And 18 in, so about 26 years total. Or 26 years total.
I know 8 years is still a long time, but are you starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel?
It's kind of like at this point.
Hold on one second. Sorry.
I'll get it.
I did too.
It's like at this point,
Okay.
I've been to college, bachelor's degree. I've done several programs. I don't meet the criteria. Unfortunately, I don't meet the criteria for a lot of vocational programs because I have 8 years. You got to get down to 4 years or under, 3 years or under, and sometimes there's some of them make exceptions, But it's like my mindset is, it's basically I've done all the work, and I've made it to a point where I am ready to go, and I'm not going anywhere. So now it's almost like maintenance. It's like I built the building. Now I'm not going to put nobody in it. I just have to keep it up for the next 8 years. A little disheartening, but if that's the way it's got to be, you don't think about 8 years from now, you think about today, tomorrow. And because I think about 8 years from now, I see myself at 40, and I'm like, 14 to 40, that's a big deal. But if you do it one day at a time, it don't just sneak up on you. You try to find goals each, to get yourself there. So will I do it? If I have to do it, yeah. Do I want to do it? Of course not, So that's where I'm at.
Oh, yeah?
Hey, man.
What's taking so long?
I don't know. How you doing?
You all right?
I'm doing good.
I thought they gave you a DOC number or something.
I know. Been out there forever. So.
Like,
You
man.
looking good?
Hey, thanks, too. Yeah, hanging around, man. See, we're got the beachfront. Just have a prison. Yeah. When we
Oh,
did our,
you can scroll them. You can
When
You
they
can
did
pick your vacation.
That's where we take our pictures. When we did that photo shoot for the New York Times, the guy who was taking it was a really artsy guy. And he loved the fact, he wanted me to put my coat on and stand in front of him. Just like, man. I was like, why don't I have the coat on in front of this? Like, man, because it's never been done before. You know what I mean?
That's
It's
why.
so different, you know? But all right, you know. It's, you ready to get going?
Yeah, sure.
You doing
We're
all
gonna
right?
say, yeah. We're looking good, man.
But
So I guess we'll start with, or coming back, it's how the whole, the appeal thing came about. If you can kind of walk us through,
okay.
you know.
Well, when the article came out, you know, I was bombarded with people that were writing and trying to help me out. You know, I mean, as someone contacted you, you know, and there were several of them that were lawyers, maybe practicing a different kind of law in a different state, or they were one, you know, her mother was a lawyer, or, you know, one, his dad was a lawyer. There was various people that all had some kind of law connection. And they kept asking, you know, how can we help? We want to try to help you out. So I had people that were doing research. One in particular was doing a lot of research for me. You know, she was my motivation, and she was, you know, we really became pretty close friends. And she pushed me to you know, and she was smart too. You know, she understood things I didn't understand how she understood it, but it's because, you know, probably because of the lawyer background in her family. But she had contacted Monica Foster and was having a dialogue back and forth with me and Monica Foster. And Monica Foster really wanted to take this case because we're trying to find pro bono, because we understood that in a case like mine, if you're going to hire a lawyer, you're going to be probably a good lawyer. You're going to bring back $20,000.
Right.
You know, not an easy case. You
Right.
know, and it's a PCR. So, but Monica Foster was willing to do it, just like she did Paul Gingrich's, because of the connection there. And she read the article, and she was impressed with everything. But she was not able to do that because of the new position she was appointed in the federal courthouse. You know, under like federal, I don't remember what it was, some kind of, you know.
Right.
But she advised me to file my post-conviction relief pro se, which would go to Indiana Public Defender's Office. And she said, try to get you a lawyer at a particular office down there. They said they had, you know, they have some really good lawyers. And so I did that. I filed it, and then I sent a letter, you know, to, I can't think of his name right now. He's the guy that runs the Public Defender's Office, and explaining it. And within a few weeks, he was writing back, and I had a lawyer, and the lawyer was actually, he's a really good lawyer, but he was actually my lawyer from 10 years ago when I originally filed in 03, you know. And he came up to see me, and he wanted me to see this image. He said, when this article came out, he said, I want you to imagine all these various lawyers in the public defender's office in different huddles with that copy of that magazine, reading that article and discussing different strategies they would have if they were to help you out. And he got the case.
Wow.
You know, and he was happy to have the case. And so, and that was a year ago. He's came to see me many times, you know, and we've had some pretty good dialogue and, you know, some conversation stuff, and we've got to a point where we're almost basically on a first name basis now, you know, and I like to think that he enjoys talking with me about the case because I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm smart enough to understand it now, whereas before I couldn't. But I understand the case, and so we'll just sit there like, you know, you and I are talking, and we'll talk about strategies, and we'll try to get inside the head of the prosecutor and the judge, and, you know, and he can sit there and he'll tell me about the good thing about being a public defender in that office is there's lots of lawyers around you all the time. And he has talked with Monica Foster as well, so it ain't like she stood by idle. She actually has given some advice to him, and, you know, so she has done her part in this. Mm-hmm. But he's done the research, and he's put everything together, you know, and so that has just kind of left me knowing that this is what I have to work on if I expect to get out of here and be successful. I mean, I have no doubts I'll be successful in daily life, and I like to think that I'll actually move up the ladder pretty quickly. But my relationships and my friendships and my family relationships, that's when it's going to, I know I need a lot of work in that. A lot. Because you don't have, you know, you have friendships in here, you know, and I've got some guys I consider like brothers to me. But we're all in the same boat. We all understand each other. We all know what it's like to not get mail, so we're all there for one another in the best way we can. But, yeah, there's a lot that needs to be settled, or a lot that needs to be resolved with me and what I carry with me. Mm-hmm. The trust I have in people, the lack of faith, and all these different things that I have to go through.
Do you ever just fantasize about what it would be like to go back to Puritan?
Yeah, all the time.
How does that play in your head?
Well, I've thought about two perspectives. One, I thought about in this project, I would love to be able to go back there with a camera and with all that kind of stuff, and and see my mom and dad's grave. This is not because I'm trying to get attention or exploit myself. I know that if I was in somebody else's shoes and I had a chance to watch a story like this, I've always want to know what it's like for someone in my kind of crime to get out after they've been in there since they was a kid. What do they go through? Well, I'm going to show you. This is what I'm going through, and I want to show it to people. Because I would like to watch that myself. So I think about that, but I think the negative part about that is, the people that are in town are going to see cameras or whatever, you know what I mean? And then they're probably, word to get out maybe, and then so I wonder if anyone's going to actually yell out anything negative, like murderer or whatever, it's very possible. So the other part I've always thought, I've thought about, well, if I go there and there is no camera, would I be able to not be recognized? I'm in Ousley, there's a lot of Ousleys in that area, and I'm sure we share some, physical similarities and stuff, and I don't really look like I did when I was 14, but I don't think people really remember anyways, as far as that. So I think about that, and I think about just, can I be, anonymous, or that's how I think about it.
Right. Is there anyone you want to see back there?
No. There's people that I wouldn't mind seeing, but I really don't. There's a fear that I have that people from that time, minus Chloe. Chloe I've known since I was 4 years old, and they're, even when they lived right next door, they literally lived right next door to my house. So when I even seeing them, I've told her, and her boys are like brothers to me, that it may be a while before I can actually get out to your house, because that's right next door. And I don't know if I can be that close right away. But other people, like friends that were at the time, I think about them and I think it might bring too much back that I don't want to think about. And it probably would do me no good to think about it. It's just, that's a different life. It feels like that was my little brother. Mm-hmm. And that was me when I was 14, but that's not me.
Right.
And so I look back at it as a different person, a different life, and I don't want the associated things with it. Mm-hmm. Nothing against them at all. Everybody's gone on with their lives, and I'm glad. Like even with Chancey, Mm-hmm. I know that he has his opinions. He even froze me in time. That's what fascinates me. Is like people. No one is the same from age 14 to age 34, 35. But people are still saying, you're a monster. This and that, and I'm like, I understand that. I see that, but you're really not thinking. You're not thinking about, if I was a monster, you guys wouldn't be doing this interview.
Right.
You guys have experience with dealing with people, so if you even had that vibe against me, you wouldn't waste your time.
Right.
You would think people, and then that counts for something. But in time,
Right.
I'm sure that they'll see more,
Right. So, tell us a little bit about the hearing.
Hearing was like Mayberry. It was a shock. I don't mean that as an insult. It was just funny to me because I was expecting to be walking in this courtroom, and I was expecting to be big courtroom and be a bunch of people sitting behind Daniel Hampton, against me and glaring at me, and and in my side there might be a few people. I was wondering maybe people I don't even really know, but they know me or something. But instead, I walk into a really small room. It's like a conference room, and even if it's a good thing that I didn't have a bunch of people. I actually told a lot of people don't come because it's I didn't expect it to be really big. It lasts a long time. So if everybody that I invited had chose to show up, they wouldn't have enough seating. So it was really small. It was informal. Chloe was there. She sat behind me. She's the only person there, the only spectator there. No one sat behind Daniel Hampton. You had Daniel Hampton and his wife, the chief deputy prosecuting attorney, which I thought was kind of funny.
Right. That's right.
Husband and wife, again, on the opposing team. That was funny to me. But then you had Rex Reed, the judge and the court reporter, and then me and my lawyer and the security guard. And you didn't need any mics. It was so small, and I had actually met with my lawyer before I went in. And we had because Rex Reed and Daniel Hampton had met with them and said that they wanted to make sure to be straight up with my lawyer to say Rex Reed wanted to inform us that he's very directly involved in this case because he's been serving on that bench alongside with Dwayne Huffer for the last 17 years or so. Dwayne Huffer was my former lawyer from that time. You know, and Rex Reed knows all the investigators. Everybody knows each other because it's a small town. He told me that because he said, in case you think I'll be biased, I want to let you know that if you wanted another judge, we can do that. We can, we can cancel that today, and I will happily assign you another judge. He told me this in the hearing as well. He goes, because I personally don't think I need to remove myself from this case. You know, and my lawyer had advised me before I went in there that he thought it was good because this is the judge that sentenced Paul Gingrich, not the one that denied his waiver hearing or did the due process violation, but he's just the one that gave him the sentence. And he's a senior advisor. He's not a judge anymore. You know, so, so we had the hearing, and Daniel Hampton tried to dismiss it, saying it was not notarized and verified. It was just small technicality. That's not even a real technicality because the original was. The amended version was not, which it doesn't have to be. But the judge overruled that, though. And when the judge overruled that, I just kind of like, okay, so this is not going to be a waste of, of our time. So then Daniel Hampton tried to say that my case is not like Gingrich. He said because Gingrich asked for a continuance, and you didn't ask for a continuance, so therefore you're just basically ass out. He didn't say ass out, but that's what he meant. You know, it was on you. You know, and he said that's ineffective assistance counsel. It's on your attorney. And that's true, and we do have that as an issue, but that's, but then my lawyer, so cool, calm, and collected, sat there and popped out another case and said, well, the court, in this case, it's the court's responsibility to make sure that a perfunctory hearing is not done and that I do have my due process rights given to me, and I'm aware of that. It's the court's responsibility to do that. So now the judge didn't make a ruling on that. We just present our arguments. And the judge seemed to take to that argument, and then he did some free thinking. He said that he said one thing. He said a few things. One thing that really stood out for me, and that when he said it, a thought went through my head. He said that I am troubled. He said, I'm bothered by the fact that Greg was 14 and mentally ill, found to be mentally ill at that waiver hearing. Now we're talking about competency. That's a competency issue, He said that's a problem. Now he said that. The judge put that on the record, and the court reporter puts it on the record. So if you put that on the record as a judge, you need to deal with that. This is the reason why he was doing it. He said these are things that I want to talk about at a later date, things that we need to discuss. But when he said that, though, in my mind, I said I won. It's just in my side, I felt like I won, because here's a judge that is talking like he's on my side in that. He has no political pressure. He's a guy in his 70s. Retired by choice. He's a senior advisor. I mean, he just stays on to do special cases. So he has no reason to feel like he can't side with me out of public opinion, or campaigning measures or whatever. None of that. So, and then then they said, asked us how long we need for us to finalize our arguments. 30 days, and so that was it. And I'm waiting to hear back any day now.
Do you want some? Do you want to? Anything, water or to drink or anything?
Oh, yeah.
I've got, can we just take a little?
Yeah, absolutely not.
What would you like?
How soon we forget.
I did not bring quarters in.
I did.
Did you?
I have a bunch.
I gotta turn the machine back on, by the way. I turned them off for noise.
Okay, so on a summary judgment, so then basically your sentence will be vacated.
Yes.
So it goes back essentially to
Yep.
the beginning. Now you were telling me on the phone that you have a whole idea of what you would do at that point.
Yeah. What I want to do at that point is this. Anytime guys will win, and summary judgments are not common. They're very uncommon, actually. But you use it as a power move when the case is so strong that it would make sense to use that. And that's why my lawyer is using it on this one. But if I win the appeal, then the prosecutor has a chance to decide whether or not he's going to appeal that court's decision to the higher court. Now, in that process, we're going to try to negotiate with them and say, I'm willing to take a 50-year sentence. We just do the paperwork, re-sentence me to 50 years. I plead guilty 50 years. In 4 months, I'll have a 21 years in. With my 4-year time cuts, I have served a 50-year sentence. And it's 50 and 60. I started with a 60-year sentence. Now I'm saying, in order to make it right, so it's not drag us out, just give me 50. The only thing he needs is a conviction. That's it.
Right.
He's got the time. I mean, I've served over 20 years, so you can't say that you didn't get any time out of me.
Right.
And rightfully for my kind of crime, you know, obviously I needed time and all that kind of stuff. So it's, to me, we got the victims wanting me out of here. You got me, it's ready to get out of here. You got the sentence. I think it's a win-win for everybody involved. You know, that's what we're trying to negotiate. I have to win it. Now, my lawyer does not think that the judge is going to deny it. I don't think the judge is going to deny it because the judge could already denied it. He could have denied it in June. He didn't have to set a hearing.
Right.
He chose to set a hearing and bring us back, and he could already done on that. So I don't think he'd be wasting everybody's time just to go through this process to say now, denied.
Right.
But he may set another hearing called an evidentiary hearing, where they'll probably set it for after the holidays or so, and I'll have to go back to Kosciuszko County, and then we will have witnesses brought in and testimony and all that kind of stuff. And my lawyer will tell you it's a complete waste of time, because no matter what anybody is going to testify against, nobody changes the fact that it was one day. The evidence is right off the record. It was one day.
Right.
You can't change that.
Right.
And it's the way, you know, and so that's what my lawyer is saying. In order to make it right, vacate his sentence, and then we negotiate. We tried a modification.
Right.
You know, but the prosecutor is not willing to negotiate on anything, and he's still living up to his nickname, No Deal Dan.
Is that really?
That was his nickname when I was going through in '93. He's seems to still, you know. But I didn't get a chance to mention when I was in the courtroom, and my lawyer left, you know, and I was still standing there visiting with Chloe, and the judge, you know, judge had already left, and prosecutor Daniel Hampton was sitting over putting his paperwork together. And I told myself, you know, a big reason why I went back to court is because I wanted them to see me. I wanted them to see who I am now. I'm a man. I'm not a 14-year-old mentally ill murderer or whatever, you know, whatever you want to call it. I'm not that kid anymore. I'm a grown man, you know, and I've done my time as honorably as possible, and I think I've learned a lot. But I want him to see that. And so I said, I'm not leaving this courtroom until I at least get a chance to say something to him. And so I said to Mr. Hampton, and he turned around. He walked over to me. And I said, it was really good seeing you again. He shook my hand. And I looked him in the eye, and I said, thank you. You know, and I don't really know why I said thank you at the time. I just felt like...
Just to mess with his head.
Yeah, that's what it was. Well, you know, to be fair to him, man, he has been more human to me. Maybe, you know, he denied my modification. He doesn't want to deal with me right now. But when I first contacted him in July of '07, and he wrote me back, prosecutors don't do that.
Right.
He was human to me. He talked about, you know, he was glad to hear from me. He was really proud of how I've done my time. And he said he was kind of on the fence. It's a tough situation for him. So I understand that. It's politics. I understand that, you know, he's got his career to think about, and, you know, he doesn't really want to be known for letting me out.
So, because we talked about this a bit on the phone, but, you know, I just want to, I mean, you're pretty excited just about the whole trip back up. So just tell me about that.
The short story, the long story.
Long story.
Yeah, you have to just cut me off when you're all ready to switch subjects, because first of all, when they told me on the 19th, it was the 19th to pack up. They tell you the night before. They tell you pack up, and I got so nervous because I knew I was getting ready to leave the prison and go back home. I had not been home in 20 years, you know, and I was so nervous. I couldn't think. I was up all night because they told you next morning to get you up about 4:30. Well, I was up all night. You know, I was just laying there, just thinking of all these expectations. You know, who am I going to see? The people that still work there. I mean, I'm sure there's still a couple people there. Am I going to run into somebody from home that I grew up with that's in the jail? You know, what's it going to look like? You know, am I going to have a chance to see Warsaw? But the guy that came to pick me up was Gordy, and Gordy was the guy that would give me one of my last trips. He was the guy who gave me my last taste of freedom with McDonald's when he brought me back from Elkhart for my psychological evaluation. And I didn't recognize him.
This is
It's been
20 years on.
And I didn't recognize him. He first walked in, you know, and I sat here at the prison for, I don't know, 6 hours or so before I left. And he came walking in. I didn't recognize him. And then I had this legal box I was taking back with all my legal work. And I was supposed to ask permission. Can I take it back or whatever? And I opened it up. He goes, man, that's a lot of stuff. I was like, well, that's 20 years worth. And he goes, well, you changed a little bit in the last 20 years. And I turned around and said, Gordy. You know what I mean? It was Gordy, you know. And getting in that van, it was like a roller coaster. It was just like, you know, I haven't been in a moving car in a long time, and so I mean, and we had to go pick up somebody at a Peru jail, you know, a jail here in Peru, and so I was glad to have anything that was an errand, anything that means I was going to be on the road longer. right? And I just sat there and talked with Gordy, and we talked about the case. We talked about what's changed, what's he been doing, and it was like seeing a relative.
Wow.
And I'm just all over the place at the windows. I mean, I'm like a dog being released out of the pound, And I mean, I'm just looking at everything. And what amazes me still is after 20 years, the cars really still look the same. I mean, I know that technically the designs have changed, but the trucks are still there and the cars are still there and everything. The small towns are still small towns, and it just looks the same. You have these, you get this idea that that's like the futuristic movie or something, and you're not going to recognize anything. But I get out there and I see these. Now the jails looked funny. If you look at jails the way they build them now, when we pulled up that one in Peru, I was like, it didn't look like a jail, and that was weird, But so we get there to jail. I'm first surprised is I'm booked in jail and put back in the block in 30 minutes, and I was expecting it to be hours and hours and hours. Booked in there, and I meet my bunkie, and it's kind of like you just immediately know that he's a nice guy. And I was there in jail for 8 days, and I had my bunkie working out, because I'm really into working out stuff. And these guys in jail, they're fresh from their addictions on the street.
Right.
The guys in this block have been sentenced to DOC and they're waiting to go, or they're coming back from prison like me. But there was only 20 of us, and most of them were just had been sentenced, and they have all the anxiety issues that would go with not having your drug there, or even things like nicotine and coffee. That's what cause they had chew there. And if they didn't have their chew, didn't have their coffee, they're loud. But all these conversations I had with them, they looked at me like I was like I had everything together. And that was one of the things that they kept saying, you don't look like you're 34 years old. And it was like, man, one guy was 26. He goes, man. He actually said something stupid. He goes, man, I wish I had that kind of preservation. I was like, you want that kind of time, And yeah, that's the secret, Do a long bit in penitentiary if you want to stay young, But it was such a great compliment because I was the one that had it together, And I've been locked up 20 years, So I had my bunkie working out, and he was about 45 years old, and he was heading there for meth and stuff, and was like depressed, and I had him doing these workouts, and he just felt, and he's like, man, he was just so happy. He was so happy to be doing something that's positive and something different, because he used to do it back before the drugs and before all that stuff got in the way, all these distractions. He used to do stuff like that. So I reminded him of that, and we had all these great talks. I was sitting there, met these other guys. We talked about the cases, and in the jail, we were out almost the whole time. We'd be out till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then we'd come back out at 5:30. So we had all these endless hours, and no interruptions, and just talk. And you don't go outside, you don't go anywhere. You're just in that little block. And I had a chance to sit there and listen to guys and try to give them advice. When I talked to guys who were 18 years old, those guys are 18 in there. So it was like talking with my nephew, or and trying to teach them about prison. How I came in, I was 14, and everyone's like, man, you overcame that, you survived it. And not only did you survive it, but you've excelled. And so I was connecting with everybody, and it felt like I was on the street. It felt like it reminded me of my goals originally set. When how I want to try to help people out, and it just like when my bunkie, when I left, he actually had tears in his eyes. You know what I mean? It was like, and I got here and I was able to have a letter sent to him to give him the full workout routine. Motivate him to keep up with it. And he wrote me back at some point and said, he goes, you've changed my life. He said, you opened up something inside of me, that I guess, it gave me a new way of thinking. He said, now only I got to do is I have to try to convince myself of it and convince my family of it. And that's great. That's a great testimony to be able to say that, I crossed paths with these guys even just for a week.
Right.
But walked away, and it's like I feel like I left something behind, like I left my impression there, and it was a good impression. Even with the guards, the guards there, and like I met a couple of them there that were, Gordy, it took me, but there's a guy that runs a commissary there, and when I met him, at first he didn't remember me, he didn't recognize me. He's half blind though too, so you got a bit of an excuse. But then Gordy had talked with him, so a couple of days later I seen him. He's like, man. He said, yeah, Gordy told me you were back. He's like, man, how you doing? And so we just sit there for like 15 minutes just sitting there talking like, you know, like we're talking right now, like, you know, and everyone's just, they're just, I think a lot of people are just amazed at that I actually have it together because the odds were stacked against me. I mean, you know, you're going to go to prison at 14, 15 years old, and you're not going to get that kind of treatment you're going to get. You're just going to do time. So what are you going to be like after 20 years? Most guys are going to be worse off than what they started. And I'm not. I'm better, you know. And for me to go back in jail and see that in real time with real guys, you know, and being back home, I mean, in that jail, one of the things that shocked me more than anything was the freedom that I felt. I felt like I was on the street. I could literally walk upstairs on the top range and look out the window, and behind the window, or behind the jail, was the houses. And the Owens, the grocery store that I used to go to when I was a kid, it's right there. We're just another house on the block. And these guys were all laughing at me because, you know, they're like, it's nothing to them. They haven't been locked up that long, but I've been locked up forever. And I looked at that stuff, and I'm just amazed. And I'm just looking at someone walking their dog, and I'm looking at the houses. I'm looking at the grass. Someone was out there raking grass. I was like, and I'm in jail, and I'm like, I'm just sitting there thinking, you have no idea what I've been through over the last 20 years. You have no idea how I'm looking at what you're doing. Not in a creepy way. I'm just looking at what you're doing. I'm just like, I wish I was doing that.
You haven't seen that in 20 years.
No, the simple things. You see it on TV. But, you know, like I said, another house on the block. That's all it was. And it was right there, you know, and I couldn't believe it, you know, and the food there was real food. I mean, every morning they poured real milk out of a gallon jug. We don't get milk here, you know. It was pork, it was beef, it was chicken, and they don't have to do that. They do not have to feed you like that in that jail. They do it because they choose to do it. Why, I don't know, but I mean, I certainly appreciate it. And I've told everyone that worked there, to my son, your food's amazing. You know, I'm full of them to make commercials about it, you know. I'll be the spokesman for it. But I mean, but it reminded me of like green beans. I was eating green beans. I don't like green beans anymore because this place maybe not like them. But I looked at them and I was like, well, those look different. You know, you smell them and they smell different. So you taste them and like, wow. It took me right back to Mom's garden, being right back at home with Mom. Yeah. And I couldn't believe it, man. I was just like, now I like green beans. Now I like corn. Even the carrots. I hate carrots, but these carrots had brown sugar in them. You know, so I had to like try them. And you know, they're still not the greatest, but I was like, wow, I'll get brown sugar. But all the guys, you know, they would just sit there and laugh at me every day. Every time a meal would come in, they would just sit there. No exaggeration, they just sit there and they just wait and see what I was going to say. Because I mean, it was going to be something different to me. Yeah, taco salad, all these things that are just taken for granted. I had, you know, and it was amazing to me. And it was like, and so I was excited the whole time. And I was like, man, you know, this is the streets. I'm in jail, but this is the streets. And I felt like this is just the step right before I leave. You know, this is what I'm going to feel every day for at least a while, what I'm going to already call the honeymoon phase. Because I know there'll be a honeymoon phase when I first get out, where everything's great. There's not a problem in the world. Oh, it's endearing. You know what I mean? Everything's beautiful. But then, you know, that will wear off and then reality will set in. But the greatest part, like I said, was coming back. Not coming back to prison, but the process. You know, a guy named Jim picked me up, and Jim was old enough to be my dad. He had a son exactly my age. Jim was he was a sheriff back when this happened, not in my county, but in the county next to me, where I went to school in. He was there. He remembers it. You know, he remembers the crime, and you know, he picked me up and he took me and put me in the car, and I started getting in the back seat like I thought I was supposed to, and he's like, no, no, no. So you're just sitting in the front, and I was like, you know, I haven't been in a car. Now I am up here in a van. The van was great, but a car is much more exposed with windows. He put me in the front, man. I was like, wow, you know, I get a chance to, it's like I get a chance to like ride shotgun, you know, you know, I mean, I get a chance to ride in a car. And I said, man, I haven't been in a car in 20 years, and he's just smiling, you know. We come out of the garage, and he puts the window down, and, you know, I haven't been outside in a week, so the light kind of hits you off at first, but he pulls to the side, and there's a guy walking on the sidewalk, a friend of his, and he pulls up, and now he's talking, and I'm sitting there. And it just takes me, I remember it's like I was with my dad, you know. You know, here I am, this guy's having a conversation with someone on the street, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and it made me feel like a kid, but in a good way. You know, it made me feel like I was a real person and in a real life somewhere and not, you know, doing time. And then he decided he was going to run some errands. He's going to run some errands at home, you know what I mean? So, we end up, he's like a tour guide. He's pointing out things to me, and I see that Army Jeep on that courtyard, that not one time have I ever remembered that image of that Army Jeep. But when I was a kid, every time I went to Warsaw, that was the thing I fixated on because I liked the Army stuff, And not once in 20 years have I ever thought about that. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, forgot all about that, man. And we're looking at it, and the window's down, the breeze is blowing in my face, and the sun's out, and and it's August 28th, And I'm looking around, and it's like people are just doing their life, and you got the lights, and there's a hustle and bustle. And it's a small town. I don't even know what it'd be like in the city. It'd probably be information overload, But but we ended up going out to a place called Smith Tire Company, and Smith Tire Company is where me and my dad used to go. Now he doesn't know any of this stuff. It's where me and my dad used to go to get tires back in the 80s. And I seen it, and I was like, man, here I am. And we pull up there, and I'm sitting out in this parking lot for 15 minutes. And the window's down, and the cars are going by, and I'm just sitting there thinking, all these memories coming back to me, and I'm like, I got to be getting out. I said, I have to be getting out. I mean, I'm saying I won. I feel like I won. And I didn't even talk about the court hearing itself, but I'm saying I feel like I won. And we leave that place and we go to get gas, and so I'm sitting there, and I'm going to tell myself I'm going to look at this gas pump. I'm going to see, because gas prices, I see it on TV all the time, so I am locked on the gas pump and watching those dollar amounts, you know what I mean, and watching the gallon amounts go,
Right.
little things like that, just trailing behind. And it was $46 for, was it, I think 10 gallons of gas or something like that? I forgot the math. $46 though. Or 13 gallons of gas, or what it was. And I was like, wow. And then I was watching people in the gas station that come in to get gas, and I was looking at them, and just wondering who they are and where they come from and what they, and how mundane is this to them. And then here I am, how it's like the greatest thing in the world. I'm at a gas station, and it's like, being at Disney World or something, And then we end up in Winona Lake, which is right there in Warsaw. And that's where it really hit me, because now we're relaxed. He's got the gas, he's got the tires ordered and stuff. Now he's just like, well, over here, we got this, and that, and here's a hotel. I don't think that was there when you were here,
Is he just giving you a drive around at this point?
Yeah, we're making our way back, but we're not taking the direct route. We're just kind of going through town. And whether or not, I don't know whether he was this way, he wanted to do it, whether he was doing it to help me out, I don't know. Right. But it helped me out, regardless of what the motive was. And I'm seeing this town that I haven't seen in forever, And then there's that one road there at Winona Lake that my mom, whenever she'd run errands when I was a kid, I'd ride with her. She would make a point to go to Winona Lake to take this one road because it was a really steep incline. It had a really big hill on it. And I'm just sitting there and I'm looking around, and then all of a sudden I look forward and there's that hill. Oh. There's a million roads he could have took, but he chose that one road, and I seen that hill, man, and it just, I almost lost it at that point. We're both men in the car. I didn't want to ruin the moment, So I was just like, man, this is the road my mom used to take, And the hill's not as big as it used to be.
Right.
Still a big hill, but it's not, enormous like I thought when I was a kid. But then we were on the road, and I started getting a little anxiety because, I felt, we were close to Aunt Linda's house. Aunt Linda is not very far away. She's right on this road. You just keep going for a little bit further, maybe a mile down the road, and we would have passed her house. For a moment, I thought he was going to go to Pierceton, but we turned off, and then we were just on the open road for the next 2 hours, and we had the greatest conversation, man. Greatest conversation. We talked about life when he was a kid, when he was a teenager, and the struggles he had. We talked about my case, the appeal process. Talked about my case back when it happened, and what he felt. He asked me some questions. Well, was it really this, like the paper said? I was like, no. And I told him about college. He said he was proud of me. It was like so many times I felt like I had that chance.
Right.
I felt like I had that chance to ride with my dad. It's like that was like, this is my moment. And he could have been my dad. And but at the end, when we started getting close to the prison, I told Jim, I said, man, no matter what happens with my case, whether I win my appeal here real soon, or whether I got to do the rest of the time, I said, you have given me the greatest car ride ever. Wow. I said, you have given me like that, that renewed energy that I needed, You know, he did a lot of smiling and laughing throughout most of this car ride, right? But at the end, you know, when he took the handcuffs off of me, he looked at me, he said, "Greg," he said, "I wish you the best of luck." I shook my hand and held on to it for a minute, you know, and he goes, "I hope to see you again," you know. And that was my ride, and then I've been geeking on that for the last 2 months.
Wow.
You know, and every day when I'm sitting there, and I'm getting a little impatient about the hearing, or I'm getting impatient with the daily life of prison. You know, I keep thinking about jail, and I keep thinking about the guys there, and how I made an impact in their lives, and how they impacted me too.
Right.
You know, and I think, well, that reminds me, you know, and that keeps me going, and keeps me just trying to stay positive. Remember the goal.
Right.
You know.
You want to talk to him a little bit about the actual hearing itself too, Scott?
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I passed all over that one.
No, believe me, that was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah, I feel like I was motor mouthing.
No, it was great. That was really
You should write
great.
an essay of that. I don't know if you write a lot.
Yeah,
I've
a
read your
little bit.
letters with-
Yeah. Well,
Really?
what's cool is that in this program, Lane, the PGP, we call reflection groups, and I've had reflection groups where I've told this story,
Huh.
and these guys like it because we're all in the same boat here. We're all trying to go home. We all want to go home. So I actually had a chance. I say, without a shadow of a doubt, on August 28th, 2013, I was free. I was free that day. I was in handcuffs and a bright orange jumpsuit, you know, but I was free.
How you describe the gas station, and we're all the people that take that for granted. So
Yeah.
I'm sitting there like pulling little daggers out of my mouth. Like, God, he's so
It was
right.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, and this is a drag going to a gas station. It's just like one
Yeah.
of those chores you got to do.
Yeah, and
you
I'm
know.
just like taking it all
No,
in,
the,
you know.
the way you described it was so visual.
Yeah.
Like I was picturing the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah, and it was funny with
Beautifully
Jim
spoken.
because Jim was like, before we got to the gas station, he goes, "You got time for me to get gas, Greg?" I was like, "I got all the time in the world."
Yeah, I'm not in a
Said, "I'm in
hurry."
no hurry to get back. You know, we can go anywhere, and I'm going to enjoy it." You know?
Actually, I want to, before you ask about the hearing, I'm obviously you've given a lot more thought to what's going to happen now that getting out is becoming more of a real possibility. What do you see as the biggest challenge you're going to face, just you personally coming out?
I think about this every day, and I think that the challenge I'm going to face, first of all, any challenge I'm going to overcome. I already have that set in my mind. I'm an overcomer at this point. I feel very strong, but I know it's not going to be just like that. You know, the challenges I face, I think, are going to be with the discouragement of maybe, you know, once everything stops being great and then real life sets in, I think that's going to be the challenge. I'm going to think all those years you did in prison, you know, all the times that you wish you could, you know, you see your mom and dad again. All those things, I'm going to think, man, you know, you did all that time, and then now what? Now what's your goal now? I think that's going to be the hardest part, because I know it's going to happen. I know it's going to be like I'm going to look around, I'm going to think, you know, what now? You know, you no longer have, because in here, you know, you have that way of saying, well, if I could just get out, you know, and a lot of guys actually fool themselves into thinking that if I just get out of prison, then everything's going to be fine.
Right.
And I hope I have never got out of prison. So, but I like to think that in anticipation, that's not true.
Right.
Life is life no matter where you're at. If you're in here, you're doing life. It ain't like I'm, you know, in a bubble. I mean, this is a confined environment, but still, it's real people, it's real emotions, it's real struggles. It's just different struggles than what you're going through, but it's the same emotions. So I know that life is in here. It's just out there. You know, I'm going to have freedom. I'm going to have liberty to actually choose to do the things to accomplish the goals that I write down on pieces of paper and say, I want to do this. You know, I want to start this business, or I want to write this song, or I want to record that. I have no excuses no more. Now I have to say, well, I have to do it when I get out. I'll be out. Right. And so, and I know that there's going to be plenty of rejection. There's going to be plenty of people that's not going to give me the time of day, even if they wanted to, just because they know it's going to be a nightmare when it comes to the press or the public opinion. They're not going to take me in because of my past. That's fine. But I know that the challenge I think I worry about is that discouragement. Mm-hmm. I'm going to overcome it, but I don't want to feel it again. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be taken back to before prison, you know, where I was trapped and there was no way out. You know,
right.
Prison's automatic trap. You know it. you work your way in here trying to get out of here. Some guys are just destined to do all their time, and sometimes I wonder if I'm one of those guys. You know, we're going to see over the next month or weeks or whatever when I get this news for this appeal. But that's what I'm most dreading, is that part.
Right, or
When
get
everything,
prepared
like I say, when everything stops being great.
Well, look, man, I think it's great you're anticipating that, because I think you're right. I think that's one of the ways so many guys, when they come out, run into trouble. You know, they imagine that they're walking out into Shangri-La because they built the outside world into this great thing, and I've seen it time and again. They just have a real problem dealing with discouragement, you know, or finding a job, or somebody at work gets promotion over them because they've sucked up to the boss, or what, you know, all that stuff that everybody goes through every day outside. When you're inside, you know, you're kind of you have very little control over anything. So and you're kind of spoon-fed along. And when you have one of the things that comes with freedom is disappointment. It just does,
and it's the responsibility.
You know?
You know, in here, it's like in here, as I was telling Karen, you know, I was just telling you, you know, I don't put the smiley face on if I'm not feeling it. And I have the luxury to do that. If I don't want to really approach life necessarily that day, I can stay in my cell. I can stay in my bunk. I don't have to do my job necessarily, you know. I don't have to. It's that simple. But on the street, it's not the way it works. Now, I can handle responsibility. I've had real jobs in here, you know, where you have to go, or you're going to be in trouble, or you're not going to, you know, whatever. So if I have to do it, I'll do it. But I like, when I look at it out there, I mean, I want the responsibility. I mean, I want to be able to get out of here and actually live through that, because it's too easy right in here to feel like, you know, or mislead yourself into thinking, you know, everything's going to be fine when you get out. It's not true. You know, I don't think it's true. You know.
You know, the other thing, and I also I see this with anybody who's been in for a while and comes out, is, you know, in prison there's such a thing about respect and standing up for yourself, and you know, you give somebody an inch, they take a mile, and so it's that really ferocious thing that you learn of this kind of this kind of a law of a jungle thing, where you got to stand up for yourself, or you're going to become someone's bitch, essentially. And that's something also that more than even disappointment, is one thing I worry a little bit about with you, just because I know you have this thing, this really pretty ferocious thing about self-respect, and you know, and I've seen it with other guys, you know, it's a cashier is rude to them, or you know, or someone bumps into them on the sidewalk and they don't don't say excuse me and stuff. That kind of stuff in prison can be really big, and on the streets you just have to kind of like let it go. And some guys have a really hard time letting it go, and then, you know, you get in a fight with somebody, you know, over a little bullshit thing. Cops show up, who are they going to believe? You know.
Exactly.
So I mean, that's one thing I've wanted to talk to you about, of just like that, you know, you need to. I mean, you've got a lot of programming that's gone on over the past 20 years, and you need to give thought to how you sort of ratchet that kind of stuff down.
Oh yeah, I think about it all the time. You know, it's like I used to say a few years back, because in here, a lot you're disrespected every day, every day, whether it's from a staff member. I mean, and even if they're not trying to, you take it that way just because it's harassment, and it aggravates you. But I learned a long time ago, in '99, you know, after that 2-year period where I was getting a lot of write-ups for mouthing off to staff members, and getting a lot of write-ups, I learned, okay, that's not working. So, and I looked around me, I looked at grown men that were my age right now. I was 20 years old. I looked at them, and they have wasted all these years in prison getting more and more time added on because of that way of life. And I was like, oh, you know, so I started thinking for myself. And now I just bite my tongue. You know, I just go through, I know the motions, I know what to do. I know that, you know, this is a system, out there's a system. I know what I can and cannot do. And so I just do it. You know, now sometimes when I encounter people that are in a bad mood and they're rude to me, I'm just nice. And I've found more times that they actually respond to that. I've gotten along with some of the worst staff members in the penitentiary. I mean, these people are, and I'm not here, but at Westfield, wherever, Wabash, I've gotten along with them because I'm nice. You know, some people think, you know, will think that I'm being a con
Right.
smart, as
Right.
they said at Westville. That's fine. You know, most likely will change your mind when you see that I demonstrate this over time,
Right.
and that I'm not putting up a game here. But years ago, I used to say that I couldn't wait to get to the street so that I could be rude back
Right.
to a cashier. So I could, and I always had these visions like, not only am I going to be rude, but I'm going to lecture.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to sit here and make a moment, you know, because I have the lecture to do that.
Right.
And I wasn't going to like get like cussing her out necessarily. You know, I wasn't going to cause where they could call the cops on me. I was just going to like give this long lecture. But I don't think like that anymore. I just think that I'll just be nice.
Uh-huh.
And maybe I'll be that one nice guy that she meets that day.
Uh-huh.
You know, that when she was trying to be rude to me, she didn't get that effect.
Right.
You know, BB was like that,
Huh.
where I could never argue with BB. I tried arguing with BB a couple of times when I was his bunkie. You can't argue with somebody who doesn't give you anything to work with. You have no choice. It's like a kryptonite. You know, they're so
Yeah.
positive and they're just, you know what I mean. So you have no choice but to just kind of come to their attitude.
Right.
And as far as like, you know, the disrespect with fights, I already know exactly what I'm doing with that. My line is never going to be, you know, trying to. I've worked, you know, anger and aggression has been something that's been with me since I was a kid, growing up with my dad and the boys in my family. You know, we were always kind of aggressive and stuff, and that's why I was good at wrestling. And then you mix all the depression and all that stuff. So anger and aggression has been something I've had to work on for 2 decades now. And I'm so much laid back, and got a lot of guys say you're a really humble guy, and you know, and you're respectful and stuff. And that's because I know you can't take it to a certain level, otherwise you're going to get yourself in trouble,
Right.
in here or out there. So out there, if I encounter somebody that's like that, my whole line is, I'll call the cops. You know what I mean? I have no problem with that because I can't do anything. There is such thing as an old-fashioned ass whooping, and I understand
Right.
that. There are some people, you know, in life that do need that
Right.
because they have gotten out of hand. You know,
Right.
they've really gotten, their head just blew up. But I can't do it because,
Right.
you know, and I'm not saying I can whoop the world. It's nothing like that. What I'm saying is, I'm not going to put myself in a position where you're going to have power over me. Where I'm saying I'm going to call the cops and I'm going to sue you. If you touch me, I'm suing, and that's what it's going to be.
Right.
But I'm not. You know, in order to get into that situation to begin with, you generally have to put yourself in a bad place.
Right.
I don't plan on going any bad places necessarily. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't plan on hanging around rough bars or none of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
but I'm ready for it. You know, that's how I did it at Westville, because
Right.
Westville was all about coming out of Wabash and you went to Westville. It was all about fighting. Everybody fights there, you know, and I was able to be diplomatic there and still keep my respect, and I've gotten along with so many. I have no problems there, you know, and that was for 2.5 years. That's when I really first put that into practice and learned that works.
Hey, have your sisters seen you? Have they come up?
I haven't seen either one since I was 18 and 20.
Wow.
I last seen Angie when I was 18 and Tammy when I was 20.
Wow. Are they writing you? Or
Hey, can we, I don't know if I really want to put those names in there like that. I mean, okay.
Don't worry.
I don't want to, because they get sensitive on the
Yep,
media
yep,
stuff.
I've got you. I've got you.
I haven't heard from them directly in, I don't lost track of time, 2 years maybe.
Oh, really?
You know, but they keep track with my uncle, and they called my lawyer right after that hearing happened. They both called him, and he came to see me. He said, they contacted me.
Huh.
So they're keeping track of it.
Has Eddie come back up?
No, I haven't seen him since we,
Since?
3 years ago when we were sat here
Wow.
with that mediation.
Right.
You know, he's busy. I mean, he works, you know, and money's tight, and, you know, life is just life out there.
Right. Is Chloe still coming down?
It's been about 1.5 years since I've seen her. I seen her in jail, though. She was at the hearing.
Oh, she was.
So
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we got a chance about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to sit there and visit.
Uh-huh.
You know, she was sitting right right behind me,
Huh.
you know, because she lives right there at home, so it was easy for her to be there.
Right. So when was the last time you had a visit from anybody?
I don't know, 1.5 years ago or so.
Wow.
Nothing this year. Oh, no, wait a minute. What am I talking about? I had 2 visits this year.
Huh.
Yeah, it's like the last 1.5 years since the article came out has been, now I actually have people that are seeing the documentary first and then
then
go in the
finding the
article.
article.
Yeah, and it's like the documentary will make its rotations around.
Huh.
And for some reason, the people that are in overseas, like I just met someone from Australia, there's been Germany, Switzerland, Australia, they all have seen the documentary.
Huh.
And then they find out about the article. Where in America, it's usually like they see the article,
Right.
then they see the documentary. But so they're,
Scott and I planned it that way.
Oh, is that what it
Sort
is?
of tag team thing.
Genius. Brilliant.
If that cord's bothering you, by the way, you can.
No.
Okay.
I just move around a lot, But, yeah, I had 2 visits this earlier. Well, I had one this year and I had one in December.
Uh-huh.
These are both from people that I met since the article came out.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
the strangers.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
was that like? Was that weird? So you're meeting somebody you've just never.
Oh, I've
had
been
any-
through a lot of weird moments in the last year and a half, Scott.
Well, I told you about the article, didn't I? Remember?
I tell you what, though, it has been invaluable, the stuff that I have learned. Because being locked up since I was 14, obviously one thing that was on my mind more than anything was relationships and having those experiences.
Right.
Because I missed out on them. And that, for the longest time, that was what I missed more than anything was all the high school, and the people that were going to high school, I didn't get a chance to go to high school, and they would write and they'd say, hey, got my driver's license, or I've got this girlfriend, we're having sex, and all this kind of stuff, and I'm sitting there like, I missed out on all that.
Right.
And then, so in late in the 2000s, when I thought I was going home, once again, I still had in my mind, that's why I felt like I was going to be normal. I want to feel normal. I want to be having the relationship. And then, since that article came out, a lot of people have written to me, and there's been a lot of ups and downs with,
Right.
I'm not saying I had relationships with everybody, but I'm saying there was close friendships, there was things that probably went further than what we should, and
Just in
but
letters and
it's
stuff
taught
back.
me that that's not what you need to do right now. Not that I'm saying it's bad. I'm just saying that's not what it's in your cards right now, because you can't put yourself. First of all, you can't depend
No.
on people like that. You can have codependency, but yeah, you just got. It's just reminding me how independent I have to remain and where I need to focus.
Right.
But it's also, man, it gave me a great load of experience.
Do you remember what I
I've
said?
learned some things.
You remember what I said right before the article came out?
I think about it every day.
I said,
Every day.
I said, I can't promise you it's going to change anything about your case, but one thing
Yeah.
I can promise you is you're going to hear from lots of crazy ladies.
Yeah, I think they found their way. They found their man.
Yeah, but you're right, man. No, you can't. Of course, you any sort of human connection, you want to
Yeah.
pursue it, but it's so easy to write stuff, and when someone's locked up, first of all, it's just easy to kind of say too much in a letter.
I know
anyway,
it. I hate that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if I can't say it to you in person, I'm not going to say it.
Right.
Because I like to be, who I'm going to be.
Right.
And it's like, I love the experience, because last year and a half, I've met a lot of people. We're talking in the 20s, and it's been like, and they continued, like the Australian, I just met her a week and a half ago, from Tasmania, Australia.
Wow.
Not only is Tasmania Australia, but it's 150 miles south of the mainland.
Right.
That's way out there in the Tasman Sea, there in the Indian Ocean and stuff. And but it's these people that I meet. They're not bad people. I don't know them. You can only know them so well.
Right.
You can get pretty. And when you talk to them on the phone, I've talked to several of them on the phone. You can kind of develop a pretty decent friendship. But what I like about it is it lets me know that I am normal, that I am not institutionalized.
Right.
That's one thing I forgot to mention about being out there on August 28th, is not once in that whole car ride did I feel out of place.
Mm-hmm.
I had that conversation with Jim, and I made eye contact, looked out the window. I felt like I belonged out there.
Mm-hmm.
There was no, ooh, I'm in a car and I'm afraid, or I don't fit in out here. I fit in out there.
As it appears you're coming closer to coming out, does it made you think about the crime in a different way? Is it in a way, is it kind of more, is it rawer to you now, or I don't want to. I don't want to feed you. Does it feel any different? And then maybe even having gone back to Warsaw and being in your hometown.
Well, I'll say that what really has changed with me over these last few years is because of the media stuff that we have worked on, and the stuff we talk about with the appeal. It's actually taught me how do I say, it's like I understood that I was mentally ill when I was 14. I didn't understand the impact of how, and it's forced me to think about things in a different perspective, to understand, what was really going on and dissect it even more. And it's taken me this long to actually realize, you really were gone. You really were, you needed a lot of help back then.
Right.
And when you get into prison, you just, you're around guys that we're all from different backgrounds, and we're all screw-ups, and you just do time. And there is no counseling, there is none of that kind of stuff, and so you just do time, But this has been, in a way, has been counseling, because we're talking about this story, we're talking about it, and when I talk about it, I have to express it. And it's been, like I said, I'm getting, plus I'm in my 30s now, so you start to get into the new perspectives as you become, in your 30s. So I see the impact of what I need, what I, and another thing is as I got with these pen pals, and I was in a really good relationship with one of them, and you really know what kind of baggage you got when you get in a relationship. That's when you know what you've been carrying around. And I seen what I brought to the table together. But it's that article that reignited the energy into it, that has made it a source of attention at this point. And when you have Paul Gingrich involved in it, where we 2.5 years ago, where me and Karen meet, and we've just by coincidence and find out that me and Paul Gingrich and Colt Lund are all from the same town, and Paul Gingrich was waived by the same prosecutor, and the judge that waived Paul Gingrich was my lawyer back then. All these things are all tied together, and so right. Gingrich wins. And when Gingrich wins in November of last year, first it was my first bit of hope that I could for the court process, because after the modification being shot down, it kind of and how things go around here, you just kind of you don't want to trick yourself into getting too much hope about it.
Right.
So when he won, I remember my friends telling me he won, and I was like, it just felt right. It felt like, okay, this is the beginning. So then when he won, and then it was supported in April by the Supreme Court of Indiana, I felt like I was on a winning streak. He's winning, and I'm happy for Paul Gingrich. He needs to be winning. But while he's winning, I'm winning.
Right.
Because, his issue is the same issue that I got. It's a matter of jurisdiction. It's a matter of that adult court not having proper jurisdiction over you, and so therefore whatever they do to you is void. You got to go back to the juvenile court and do it all over again.
So with his issue, what was it, 6 working days between the crime and when he was
about
waived?
About five. Basically a work week, more or less.
And with you it was 1?
1. It was overnight.
Right.
And if you really get technical, if you really get down to the bare bones of this, it was 2 hours. I was only present for 2 hours to be a part of this. They had me segregated up in the Fort Wayne Wood Youth Center around nobody. I didn't have contact with anybody. That was on Sunday evening, and then Monday they're doing the paperwork for all this. I'm still up there not talking to anybody. They bring me back Tuesday morning. I meet my uncle. I meet my lawyer. I go to trial. It's over with.
That's amazing. So the first time you met your lawyer was that Tuesday morning?
Yeah, right before the hearing, and I could never tell you what he said, because I hadn't slept in 2 days.
Right.
Because I'm in a state of illness. I'm gone. I'm gone. The only thing I can remember about that moment is everybody crying and trying to make, is this real? Is this reality and stuff, and the world is just spinning, and here I am. They throw me into court, and they don't even have guardians for me. I don't even have any legal guardians. My sisters are 19 and 21 at the time, and they throw me in court, and then it's over with, and it's just like that, My sister gets up and testifies, and she breaks down, starts crying on the, she says she fears that she'll lose me, in the adult system, that I'll never get out, and that's it, and and it was over with, and they just because they thought that, I'm assuming, I don't know what they were thinking, but I'm assuming that they felt because it was murder that there is no chance for you. But like I said, if you look at the mental health issues and all the stuff going on in my family, there was a chance for me, and professionals today will tell you. There was a chance. People that were around back then running these juvenile places will tell you that I had a chance to stay in that juvenile system, but no one gave me a chance.
Do you recall, did you say anything during that hearing? Did you speak?
No, my lawyer nudged me to say yes or say no. It was, Yeah, I may not have done that. I had to answer a couple questions, and then my lawyer would tell me yes or no, you know.
Right.
I didn't understand nothing. There's no way I wouldn't have understood it. Like being at 14, never being in trouble, but let alone when I don't even understand reality at the time. I mean, I am gone.
Right.
And my lawyer now will tell you it's unheard of for them to do that.
Right.
Unheard of. And there's no way they would do that now. You know, and then they turned around and did something very similar to Gingrich. And that's why I'm really happy that Gingrich won, because it at least told them that in the future, you can't just assume that things are going to be waived. And then we went even younger. He was 12, I was 14.
Right.
You know? And in Gingrich's case, it said, well, it's unclear whether or not he had any kind of mental health issues. Or, and my lawyer will tell you, right, it wasn't unclear with me. It's documented from even the psychologist the prosecutor hired. Normally, the prosecutor will hire something to refute what the defense says. Their psychologist couldn't even refute it, you know, but. So this, what we're working on now, is not to cover me, or it's not to like cover me trying to get out of here.
Right.
We've already covered that part, and this is talking about, this is actually going to be me getting out of here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
it's
we
like,
need an Act 3 to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Act
you
2
know.
has been really, really long.
Exactly. But I feel like I'm in my last days, and I wish I could just have enough faith to say in my last days in the story.
Right.
But you always have to second guess. It's
Right.
just, and I hate that moment. I hate that because I want to be able to call my uncle and say, you know, I won. I want to be able to tell the guys in the dorm, you know, I won. I want to be able to say that. I'm tired of saying, well, I might win, or it looks good. I just want to be able to say, I got it.
Right.
You know, and I know that will inspire other people to work on what they need to work on, or it'll make my family happy, and you know, it's not even for me necessarily, because I know how to do my time. I know that I'm leaving in 5 years, regardless of what anybody says. No matter what I say, I'm leaving in 5 years. You know, and that's going to happen.
Right.
You know, but I just want to be able to share that message. You know, instead of almost, or if this goes right, or if that goes right. You know.
Right.
So I want you guys to talk a little bit about how this unlikely friendship started in the first place. Do either one of you remember the first time you heard each other's name?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll start because Greg wrote. My wife was doing a documentary in Warsaw, Greg's hometown or home county, and I guess you saw an article about the film being shot out there.
Yeah. Oh, that year I had this thought hit me that I wanted to do a documentary on it, right? And at first I was thinking like Frontline. I was thinking of just various things I know, but then I was like, you get these hometown papers and there's an American teen. I was like, man, I need to contact her because she's been here at home, and so you know she would understand. She would at least have this reference, right? So it took me a while to get that address. The address was old.
It was completely.
Yeah, it was even
completely
active.
Didn't work anymore.
And I found it, but it still found a way to get to her, right? And that's how, yeah. And then,
So Greg wrote a letter basically saying, I mean, I still have the letter. I can still remember it. That, you know, I think at that point you'd been in prison for 16 years,
Yeah.
16 years.
16 years, yeah.
And I killed my parents when I was 14, but it looks like I'm going to be coming out soon. And I think it'd make an interesting documentary to follow me out, coming out. And so Nanette was involved in other stuff. There's no way she could have time to do it, but she showed me the letter, and I thought, man, this is make an amazing magazine article. So I wrote you back, and it actually took a little while to answer me back when I wrote you.
Well, she wrote back first, and she mentioned how, you know, you were, yeah.
That's right.
And then it was set up for me to, I think I wrote you, and then we agreed to a call.
Right, that's right. We talked on the phone.
And I remember the first call, and the one thing I remember you saying is after we talked a little bit, and then I went through my spiel about what I'm feeling, how you know, and I guess you just kind of sensed the emotion, the passion I had about it, because you said, "I'm really glad you called."
Right.
You know
that's
what
right.
I mean? And it was like, yeah, it's just, and I knew, you know, that I just kind of felt that connection, like, you know, this is somebody that I feel comfortable with sharing this with, you know.
Did you have any second thoughts, Scott? Would you consider this in your typical wheelhouse of?
No, I'd never done another story like this. And what appealed to me about it, and the original conception of the article, was I was fascinated by the idea of watching a guy who had gone away at 14 coming out. So it was kind of the Rip Van Winkle story. It's like what happens when someone goes in at 14 and come back out, and like just how much everything has changed, and so that's what I envisioned. So I came out. Greg at the time was at Westville, and I came out. It's probably about April, May, something like that. And the thing that amazed me, right? I mean, I haven't done a lot of prison stuff. I've done some, but I go into Westville and they don't take me to the visitor center, the visiting room. They take me up to the admin building, and then I meet Greg at the door, and they just sit us in a conference room. Nobody around. Greg's not cuffed or anything. We just sit in this conference room for 5 hours.
Yeah, as much time as we needed.
I mean, there's nobody there. It's just me and him, just sitting in a conference room. And then they'd say, "Yeah, if you want to come back tomorrow, come back, stay as long as you want." It was wild, and it was clear it was because they really liked Greg, what later came out at Westville, they wouldn't say it on the record really, but they all said it off the record that really hope he gets out because he doesn't deserve to be here anymore. So that first trip out, I spent, I think I had 11 hours of interview with you.
Yeah.
Did it surprise you that they allowed him so much time with you? Had you ever talked to a reporter like that?
Well, anytime I'd had done media stuff, it was more constricted in time frames, and I had done some stuff at Wabash, and the public information officer would always sit in, and so that was a little surprising to me, but I understood it, that I was working in the administration building. I worked around the superintendent on a daily basis. And we shared the restroom, same. It's like me being on the street, just another one of the guys, So I just took it to them, they're not worried. They're just not worried about me.
Yeah, I'd never experienced.
And like I told you, where was I going to go? I mean, I couldn't go anywhere. It wasn't like I can go anywhere.
Right.
We're behind a electric fence that's not only is it razor wire, but it's electric. I'm not going anywhere.
Was Greg what you thought he'd be? Were you surprised at all by anything?
I think because all I had seen, I'd seen a little picture of you, and it was just a head and shoulder shot, and I think I was surprised at how not small. It was I'd expected you to be taller. I guess that was the first.
I'm
thing.
5'10".
Are you really?
Yeah.
Maybe it was. That's funny because it's slightly shorter than me. Maybe it was. I don't know. I remember you were wearing sort of a bulky coat, and maybe you were a little bit sort of. Maybe you hunch a little bit or something.
Maybe you had the image of the convict. Because a lot of guys in here would be like, when I first got to Westville, it was a major adjustment because I didn't look like I'd been locked up for 15 years. And I looked, I was clean cut or whatever, and so at first, there were some guys that would try to come around, and I know the method, they try to intimidate you a little bit, and I'd let them finish their spiel, and then I would give mine. Well, I've been locked up 15 years, and I'm in here for murder, and this is nothing to me, and blah blah blah, and then when I would say that, you would actually visually watch them put their chest back in a little bit,
right.
Because you just know if you carry yourself a certain way, you're not going to be bothered, and I just didn't look like, on appearances, I don't really look like I've been locked up as long as I have.
Right.
Because I'm not covered in tattoos, and I don't have that look,
Right.
that darting look that some guys in here might have.
Did you have any concern at all about how Scott would handle your story?
Oh yeah. I mean, well, I'm sure, just like him on the street. I mean, in a world, this kind of world, you're automatically going to have trust issues. I have maybe a little bit more just because of my situation of growing up in here and then coming from where I come from. So I was definitely concerned. I'm sure you in my letters out first, I was like, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to talk about that. We can
Right.
talk about this, but I'm not going to talk about that. I was very adamant about this, you know what I mean? Very protective. And, you know, my sister, she made the statement like, well, you know, you be careful because, you know, hell's full of, what'd she say, judges, prosecutors, and journalists or something like that. She said, that's where hell is. That's where people in hell are made of. So I was like, all right. But as we talked, I just kind of got more of an impression of you, and I felt like, you know, picking apart things you were saying, that you were going to do it justice.
Right.
And also, like, you know, your wife, she had a reputation. I didn't just write her just because. I wrote her because of the articles. I had a lot of articles with her. I read her interviews. I paid a close attention to how she talked and what she said. And she seemed to be honorable. She seemed to be someone of integrity. And so she spoke for you, and so that also helped.
I mean,
You know?
if you think about it, what's the likelihood that he would read a local newspaper
I
and
know.
try to contact the filmmaker? And I mean, that's not,
Yeah.
that doesn't normally happen. Normally the filmmaker,
Right, it's a long chain of, it's
Yeah.
a real.
Well,
real
Frontline never
chance.
wrote me back. You know what I mean? And some other
Right.
people that I wrote never wrote me back. They didn't even bother.
Right.
You know, but
so you wrote Frontline.
yeah.
You know,
I wrote a few letters all I think around the same time, or maybe before, because it was only after that I realized, you know, you're sitting there writing when you have a person right here that would, you know, it just didn't hit me at first.
So
And, you
then
know,
how long did it take, Scott, before you started to realize what the story was actually going to be? Because it sounds like what you intended the story to be originally turned out maybe to be a little different than what the final.
Oh, yeah, it turned out very different. I mean, basically that first time out, you know, we spent 2 full days together at Westville, and I'm trying to remember if I made another trip out, but at a certain point, it became clear that the sentence modification wasn't going to happen.
yeah, it was the 2 days, and then
There was another one.
it
right?
was I got denied in July, so it was like maybe a
That's
month
right.
or two after it happened.
That's
I
right.
called you and said,
And at that
You
point,
know?
I felt like, you know, Greg had also, at that point, he'd had very few visits from anybody. There's this kind of amazing story of your teacher
Yeah.
coming to see you. You know what? I always have a mental block on his name.
Tony?
Tony
Tony
Phillips. I can't. I guess Tony told me this story that he came out, and that had been about 3-4 years before, right? Before I came out.
Oh, he came out he came to see me in 07 and then again in 08. He basically when school was out, the summer he would come to see me.
That's right.
Because
So-
the Westville was close to where we were from.
So on the 07 visit, he came out, and he didn't even call ahead to find out like if it was visiting day or not. And he got there on the wrong day.
that was
They said
08.
invited
Yeah,
up.
it was 08. Yeah.
Yeah, and it had been so long since Greg had had a visit from anybody that the administration just let him in anyway. They said that's all right. We'll make a call, and so you know it just occurred. I mean, for me, it was like, you know, here's this guy who's really told me a lot of pretty incredible stuff and very personal, obviously very personal stuff, and has really confided in me over 2 days. And so now the article, and he's very cut off inside. He doesn't, you know, he didn't. No one's coming to visit you and stuff, and I thought, well, okay, so the article isn't working out the way I thought, and what do I do now? I mean, and I just thought, you know, I can't just walk away. I can't just tell Greg, you know, nice meeting you, but ain't working out. Ciao. You know. So I just thought, you know, I'll just keep this story going, and I told Greg, I said, you know, mate, I can't figure out, without the coming out, I can't figure out what the story is right now. I mean, how you tell it. It can't just be a story about a guy just hanging out in prison.
Yeah.
You know, there's got to be some kind of arc to the story, and I can't figure out what the arc is. But in the meantime, we'll stay in touch, and so we started talking all the time on the phone, and then we did the family mediation, and I thought, you know, maybe that. You know, is that kind of the arc to a story that I close off that, and that didn't really. And then I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to write it because it's such an amazing story, and it's like, so it doesn't have this little tidy ending, but.
Take me back to the mediation. How did that come about, and how did it manifest between you two? Whose idea was it? How did that all work?
Well, I'd been wanting to do a mediation since the 90s, since just a few years after it happened. And Brown, you know, he was not in a position of authority back then other than being a counselor. I had originally asked him, and he said they couldn't make it work at Wabash. So many years go by, you know, and I'd always wondered, will I have to have a mediate? And just in my mind, I always wondered, will I actually face my family in prison before I get out? And when that modification was taking place, I was thinking, well, I'm actually going to get out before I actually face them, and it didn't happen. So I know that the modification was denied because of the one person in my family that stands against it. She's one of the victims that stands against it, and the rest of them say yes. She says no. And so I thought, well, okay, then let's try to get this mediation set. And I was in the middle of transferring from Westville to here. When I got here, it's a new place. I was like, you know, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep trying to come up with some ideas. And so I tried to get a mediation. And my lawyer, who was on my modification, who's still on my books as my lawyer, he had contacted this prison and got it approved. And they worked with this prison was gracious enough to work with me on it, because it ain't like mediations are a common thing.
Family mediation.
Yeah, any mediation whatsoever. I mean, if it's a court-ordered mediation, it's one thing. This is not court-ordered. It was a request by me.
Right.
My lawyer just had it set up, you know.
But it still took a year.
Mm-hmm.
It took a year to set up, and what amazed me was you need an outside mediator. You need to have a mediator in the room, and I spent almost a year trying to find somebody who would agree to mediate.
What was the problem?
Didn't want to get involved. I think when people, I think it happened at least, I mean, I went through 4 or 5 people, and it would kind of go on for 2 or 3 months at a time, and then all of a sudden I'd just never hear from them again. I think with at least, definitely with one, and I think with 2, as soon as they heard that what Greg's crimes were, it went by the wayside. You know, it just stopped.
I remember you saying that, you know, dealing with the Midwest, you said it's like, you know, it's like in New York, you know, if they don't want to do it, they just say, I don't want to do it.
Right, that's
It's like
right.
being in the Midwest, it's like, well, you know, and you get frustrated, be like, it's like, can't you just be a yes, and no be a
Yeah.
no? They would drag this out.
They would drag this out, and it happened again and again. It would be dragged out
Yeah.
for 3-4 months, and then they'd come up with some lame-ass reason why they couldn't do it, you know.
And then you found someone.
And finally found somebody. Finally found somebody.
And I know we only have, she's only have 5 minutes left.
Okay.
And that became a really, a very emotional day.
Oh, that was emotional war. That was just, because I hadn't seen my uncle in 16 years, you know. And like I said, he favors my dad. So seeing him was just like seeing Dad, you know. And so like I said, for the first hour, I just couldn't even say anything without crying. It was just, you know, I was just so overwhelmed with it, you know. But I'll never be able to, the feeling of being able to look him in the eye and tell him I'm sorry and tell him what was going through my head, that's what changed our relationship. He was there for me, but since then, I don't feel like I feel comfortable around him. Whereas there's so many unknowns between me and the rest of the family, there is no unknown between me and my uncle, because we've had that moment, and I know that he loves me, and I love him. He's my Uncle Eddie, you know, and so I feel like I could sit in a room with him and not feel guilty or feel like I'm, you know, intruding or don't belong there.
How did you feel filming it and being a part of something that intimate?
Well, you know, in a funny way, I mean, I feel at this point I know Greg better than almost anybody in his family. So to me, it really kind of felt natural that I'd be there. I mean, Greg has been just, to my mind, shockingly honest with me. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations, and we've covered a lot of, you know, I mean, obviously for Greg, really, really hard stuff. And so I just feel like, it's funny, you know, when the article kind of ran, I heard that one of your sisters was upset about the article, or yeah, and you know, my attitude was just like, fuck you. I gotta say it, just, you know, because it's like, you know, where have you been all this time? And what kind of right do you have to say of you know, what should be done, what should be said, and what Greg should do? So anyways, for the family mediation, I felt, But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I probably know you better than almost
Yeah.
anybody at this point.
And you've been a great support, because one thing I liked about you when my sister was speaking out against me, you know, I am honest. I'm completely honest. If I was gonna lie, then I would have made it a great stories of victimization, and you would have seen my case, and it would be like, well, now I understand exactly why he did it. But that's not the way it works in my case, because I am honest, and I am honestly telling you that that's not a clear. It's difficult to understand why I'm here and what happened, because that's just the way it is, you know. But when you have done all the research and you have seen the stuff that Tammy had said, you know, so for her to go against that, and you say, well, you know, if I was pushed to it, I could point to this and say, well, you know, you were supporting him, and you've actually verified the things that he said. So when she's calling me a liar, these things that she had admitted to before, you know,
Right.
that helps me feel validated, because I don't want people to think that I am trying to be a liar. I've got enough things to worry about with being a murderer. I don't need to be a liar on top of that, and I'm not trying. You know what I mean? And so I didn't feel like I needed that, you know. But my sister Tammy means well. She just has. All one of us are going through difficult parts of this, and I don't even know what they're going through, because I haven't been around them. Just like they don't know the path that I'm walking. I don't know it, but we'll have our time to reconcile at some point.
So if we were to fast forward 5 years, because in 5 years you will be either
Yeah.
already been out for a while, or that will be your out date anyway. What do you both see for each other and for keeping in touch? Can you even envision that far out on once this whole story is done and over and you're out, what that means for your friendship?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about, as far as projects, we've talked about a book.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But he's my connection to New York. You know what I mean? There's actually a lot of things that I have. There's so many things that I've wanted to ask him, and we've just never had, like, you know, talking on the phone. You know, you have some great conversations, but there's a lot of things I want to ask him in person. You know, and I've told you that it's like, you know, there's things that you've been through that I'm fascinated by, that I want to know more about you and your background and stuff, just as a friend, not because I'm trying to be nosy. I want to know more about what makes you, you know, why you have gone to all these other countries and done this stuff, and your path. Because, you know, you're learning about my story. I want to know about yours. So I look forward to having those moments that are uncensored and without time frames, where I can be free, you know, in street clothes like him, and we can just have that moment, you know.
Yeah, I think we'll always. Yeah, I think we'll always stay in touch.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yeah.
You've ever imagined this? That you would have this person in your life?
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, there's a few people in articles I've done that I've kind of stayed in touch with you, but almost everything I've done is overseas. But you know, and so it's by email and stuff. But yeah, no, it wouldn't have crossed my mind that a convict in Indiana and I would become buddies.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you know, you don't imagine befriending someone in my kind of situation.
Right.
You know.
Well, Indiana, New York,
Yeah.
war correspondent, childhood prisoner,
Yeah.
and journalists are supposed to keep an arm's length
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
their subjects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
That doesn't always happen.
But you
No.
know, one thing I do respect about him in that article is that you did it objectively. You know, there's some things in the article that are hard for me to swallow, that I don't exactly see it that way. But he stayed true to that. You know what I mean? And I respect that. You know, because I would look at it and I was like, you know, it's my story, so I'm like, man, you know what I mean? Does it really have to be that ugly? I mean, obviously my crime is ugly, but some things, like, you know, the way you see it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the way it is, and I respect that about him. He didn't, like, try to censor himself in it. So.
It's not a puff piece just because
No.
you've
No.
known him.
No. And I think it's what people responded to in the piece. It's you know, it's not, you know, I mean, Greg's story is not a story of you know, this 12-year-old kid who was, you know, brutalized by, you know, kind of a crazy father, for example, or something. I mean, his story is a lot more kind of subtle and complicated than that. So you know, I wasn't going to set him out to be this kind of poster boy of, because there are cases like that out there, obviously. Yeah, and I think that with a more complicated story, people have to think much more about it on both sides. You know, with if you're very liberal or very conservative. So.
Well, I guess we'll see here probably in the not too distant future exactly what's going to happen next.
Man, I hope to God I can give you all some good news here in the next couple of weeks or so.
That'd be great.
You know,
I'll send you the email, you know what I mean? I'm gonna try to call you, and
Yeah.
may have to take a couple of days, you know, to get you. I've learned usually 3 to 4 calls at one time. Usually gets
Yeah,
you.
yeah, that's
You know
right.
what I mean?
That's right.
You know, yeah, but yeah, I'm looking forward to. I'm optimistic about whatever, about what's on its way or what's here.